Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting of the East Troy School District Board of Education and all other meetings of the board are open to the public in compliance with state statute. Notice of the meeting has been sent to the media and or has been publicly posted in an attempt to make the citizens of the district aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
I will make the motion to approve the amended agendas for tonight.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The minutes for the December 13th regular board meeting are next up.
I will make the motion to approve the minutes from the December 13th, 2021 regular board meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I just want to point out, because I'm just proving that I read every word of this. Kathy, my name is misspelled on page 8. If you can just catch that, thank you. With the edit, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and the December 13th, 2021 special board meeting minutes?
I will make the motion to approve the special board meeting minutes from December 13th, 2021 as well.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. And no opposed. Great. Public participation per board policy 187. Would anyone like to speak tonight? Can you please state your name? Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? I can't
It might not be on.
Son, I just need to talk a little louder. Okay. During the November 15th, 2021 school board meeting, there was a discussion about how to use the available ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding. Much of the conversation centered around using part of the ESSER funds for a proposed new HVAC system in the East Troy Middle School. However, the middle school is experiencing a more difficult problem according to the 2021 U.S. News and World Report that shows the East Troy Middle School is in an academic crisis where only 1/3 of our 8th grade students are able to read, write, and do arithmetic at the basic Wisconsin state level for 8th grade students. These basic academics are where the school board should be most concerned and be providing the necessary tools for teachers to help our students succeed in these areas. Presently, there is no air conditioning in the middle school, yet somehow, over the years, students have managed without air conditioning, including myself, my daughter, and my granddaughter, and I have 2 more grandchildren that will be attending in the near future. As a previous East Troy School District employee of several years, I was assigned to work in the middle school for one of those years, and never did I see the need for an HVAC system throughout that time. According to a previous school board meeting, the cost of keeping the existing heating and ventilation system operating is estimated to be $100,000 per year as compared to installing a new system with a price tag of $2.7 million. By bringing this to your attention this evening, I hope you will pause to rethink the use of the ESSER money for a $2.7 million HVAC system, as a better investment would be to provide more teachers and interventionists for reading, writing, and math. Our students could then rise to a significantly greater level of academic success and erase the stigma of being underachievers. I urge the East Troy School Board to be proactive in its resolve to place student learning as the top priority on its to-do list. A new HVAC system would last maybe 25 years. However, student excellence in reading, writing, and math skills would last a lifetime. Our priority should be to invest our taxpayer dollars in the education of our students. It is not a building that educates them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Adam Wikowitz. I'm actually running for the school board openings for the elections coming up. And this is a concern that I've had for a while, since I've been coming to the board meetings for about almost 2 years. And it's one of the things that I actually get the most reaction from, talking to families, parents, and community members. It's the length of the meetings. That's it's one of the things I've noticed, that it goes really long. I've watched some other surrounding communities, even bigger school districts, be able to get through their business in a shorter amount of time. Now, I don't want to take away from the meat that we're getting into in the meetings here, but it's one of the things that I think can help lead towards more community participation. If we're concise in our speech, people are going to be willing to show up to the meetings. They're going to be willing to watch online for a longer period of time. But if they keep going long, I think that can be a contributor to the lack of participation. They may feel overwhelmed at the length of the meetings, the time it takes to come here in person or watch online or watch later on YouTube. Love having that option though, so don't get rid of that. The overwhelmness can turn into frustration because they want to participate and they do care immensely about the schools and the education of their children, but eventually the frustration turns to apathy, and I think that might be a contributor to where we are today with only a few people showing up to these meetings. You know, the numbers are pretty low and people watching online. Hopefully people can piece it out and eventually get to the whole meeting. But as the psychologist and author Jordan Peterson says in his book, 12 Rules for Life, be precise in your speech. I'd like to ask kindly to be concise in your speech as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to the financial report.
At this time, I move the approval of December 2021 payments in the amount of $1,684,320.47 and receipts in the amount of $1,706,771.34 as reflected on the attached financial statements.
Any discussion? Kathy, do you have anything to walk through?
Nothing, out of the ordinary this month, but I would take the time to direct you, if you haven't, on page 12 to read item number 3 about how well the food service program is doing this year. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Interesting. Kathy, given the nature of the supply chain right now, what do you see as being the overriding reason or reasons that the program is doing so well this year?
The overriding reason is the amount of federal reimbursement coming for the free and reduced meals. Well, I shouldn't say reduced. All the meals are free this year, and the reimbursement rate for free meals is much higher than a paid meal reimbursement. So, and then our students, of course, taking the meals, and then that turns around in the claims for us to receive the federal dollars for it.
Do we see any issues if sometimes there are weird unintended consequences that transpire, and doing too well in the, sounds strange to say, doing too well in the food service program can actually have negative consequences?
Yes.
Do we have any concerns about those?
I think you're possibly referring to we get a notice if we start to collect more money. Yes, if the food service program in a public school reaches the point of greater than 3 months of operating expenditures in the standalone Fund 50 fund balance, then we'll get a letter. But there's options of what to do with that. For example, you can upgrade your food service equipment. You can expand your food service kitchen. You can do some needed capital improvements and repairs at that point to your food service department.
Okay, great.
Kathy, can we look at page 20 just for a second?
On page 20.
I just caught the line about debt retirement, and I was wanting to understand better when those payments have to go.
Yes, so that particular debt retirement on page 20 is our short-term borrowing. And in September, we went out to bid for the annual loan for the short-term borrowing, and the interest rate was phenomenal. So instead of, you see the budgetary line item there is 75,000. This year, it will be only 16,605. So that there won't be any more payments to that line item. That will be a source of positive variance. All through the year, I keep things that are running positively, things that are running negatively, and, you know, have like a point in time of how we expect to finish the year. Are there other projects we can do if we're positive? If we're negative, what budgets do I need to pull back on and tell people not to spend? So.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the approval of current expenditures for the month of December 2021? Aye. And no opposed. Okay. Next up is the student representative report.
So on the 7th, the 8th grade visited the high school for the CTE preview day. And then I turned it on. And then last week, the high school held a plastic bag collection competition to promote and raise awareness for recycling. And then the FFA had a great honey harvest from their bees they keep. And then this week is winter homecoming, and then this Saturday is the dance. So we have theme days this week and a dodgeball tournament going on. And then freshmen through juniors have started their course planning and scheduling for the 22-23 school year.
Thank you, Sarah. Staffing retirements.
At this time, we have two that I'd like to present. I can hand out their letters.
Thank you.
I'll read them both. The first one is from Lori Poles. Lori says, "It is with mixed emotions that I write this letter to inform you of my retirement at the end of the 21-22 school year. My husband and I have decided to retire and move to a farm in Richland Center, Wisconsin. It is difficult to leave a job I love, but I also look forward to fulfilling our plans with the farm and spending time with our children and 9 grandchildren. I want to thank all of you for the wonderful life experience. When I first started working at East Troy High School, I could have never imagined the experiences I have had. With each school year starting with the homecoming festivities, proms, working with NAHS members and the community, Children's Art Day, traveling with students to 11 different countries during the summers, creating unforgettable experiences at the farm with the NAHS students, and most importantly, being a part of the lives of students moving from children to young adults. I would like to thank John Stockwitz for hiring and supporting me during my first years, Dr. Hibner and Terry Carsons for their work and support in the Distinguished Artist Award Program, teachers who have helped organize the STEAM Expos, Stacy Keene and Kent Kleinowski for their support and encouragement, and Kathy Zwergis for being able to answer any question ever. I have truly enjoyed working with all the staff at the high school as well as the awesome art teachers, past and present at the other schools. In closing, thank you to all of you who were part of my life and made my career here at East Troy High School a great memory. Sincerely, Lori Poles." So that would be the first one that we would ask for the board's consideration of accepting Lori's retirement and wishing her unbelievable gratitude for all of her years of service and thanking her for her commitment to children, not just in the classroom, but as anybody who knows Lori, the commitment that she provided well outside the classroom. She started up many programs for kids and has expanded the art program, I think, greatly in her service here. So she's going to be greatly missed, but I wish her the very best too in her newer endeavors. So that would be the first one.
Do you want to take them
Sure,
separately?
that'd be great.
Okay.
I will make the motion to accept the resignation of Lori Poles with the thanks of a grateful district.
Second.
Any discussion?
How many years did she have in with us?
Oh, Stace, want to help me on that?
John Stockowitz, I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
I
Well,
was going to guess 18.
given that John hired her, she's been here a little bit. Well, yeah.
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The second one is another letter. It says, Dear East Troy Community School Board of Education, I am writing this letter to inform you of my intent to retire at the end of the 21-22 school year. My childhood created the groundwork for a career in education. Growing up, I had a unique experience of my parents being public school teachers. I recall watching my parents prepare for lessons at home. I specifically recall spending time in my parents' schools, not only in the evening, but on weekends and during the summer. At times, I was frustrated because it seemed every family vacation was centered around something educational. Families we gathered with were typically public school educators. Little did I realize that those experiences provided a unique background experience that I could share with students during my career. I have a lot to thank my parents for, not only a nurturing presence that continues to this very day, but because they were my very first teaching mentors. We discussed learning strategies, how to focus on the child, and be empathetic with my students and the families. Upon graduating from high school and entering college, I didn't start in the field of education. In fact, I didn't necessarily want to follow my parents' footsteps, not because I didn't want a career in education, but I thought that I would disappoint them for not going into a different profession. I will never forget a discussion I had with my sister, who attended a different university and is a couple years older, one evening while I was in college. She had told me that she was changing her major to education. I told her the same thing. There was nothing that I didn't want to do more than become a teacher. Before I started my first teaching position, I was fortunate to be a graduate assistant football coach in my alma mater, UW-Whitewater. I learned early and often in coaching that it is extremely important to observe, listen, assess, plan, adapt, develop relationships, and involve decision-making. These strategies are very important in developing teaching strategies and leadership. Everyone that I came into contact with, no matter if it was a colleague in the science department, a staff member, another coach, a student, an administrator, or a parent, I learned something about relationships, learning techniques, leadership, and myself. Opposites don't always attract. Finding common interests is a good step in developing relationships. My spouse, Jackie, shares the same interest in education. Being a teacher, she had similar experiences with her family, all having careers in education. This provided a new meaning to taking your work home with you. Many of our conversations are based upon education. This is more apparent now as she has been a principal in a neighboring school district for the last 9 years. Interesting how curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication find their way into all facets of life. When I came to East Troy Community School District, my initial intent was to gain experience and move on. What I didn't count on was developing relationships with the people of our district. I often have conversations with staff about priorities when it comes to balancing one's life and career. My order includes family/faith, East Troy Community School District, Green Bay Packers, and others. To keep it light, number 3 fluctuates throughout the list. Little does one realize, my family takes a unique look at relationships developed. I developed an extended family at our East Troy Community School District, especially at our middle school and administration. I find these families have similar characteristics to my own family. We don't agree on everything. We get frustrated when a personal belief or process isn't considered. We get hurt when we are not included or heard, and we need our space at times because, well, just because. On the other hand, we celebrate each other. We have common goals. We help each other get better. We listen. We reflect. We adjust. We place our kiddos at the center, and we repeat. I have been frustrated as of the last few years because of changes to our East Troy Community School District family. When my family, Jackie, and I continue to support our children to become independent and move to their next chapter in life. Historically, this means moving out. My frustration relates to staff turnover. Key players in our building have moved to other districts. A few moved closer to home, but in each case received better salaries. Also, having discussions with them about their new situation, support, and resources for their students are enhanced due to their district's ability to provide resources and services. A school district that invests in their students with supportive resources and minimizes staff turnover historically shows positive growth and achievement. I look at the accomplishments of our East Troy Community School District, the assessment continuum, programming, personalized learning, standards-based learning, social and emotional learning emphasis, in-person learning through the pandemic, and our focus on curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and yes, content. It rejuvenates me daily with what we are and what we can continue to become. A major concern with our inability to maintain, keep pace with other districts, and invest will not only see these initiatives dwindle and go away due to the lack of funding, but the staff that inspire these initiatives will be recognized by other districts and recruited away. We've experienced this firsthand at our middle school. The East Troy community is at a crossroads. We as a district and you as a school board have a unique opportunity of local control as one of our pillars of governing. Keep our students at the center and stand up for public education by keeping our East Troy Community School District viable into the future. Thank you for this incredible opportunity. East Troy and our East Troy Community School District will always have a special place in my heart and life. Pete Sines, principal at East Troy Middle School. With that, I just want to say I was a part of Pete's interview team when he became the assistant principal, and at that time it was called assistant principal at the high school. And then he was also athletic director doing dual roles. And then he moved over to the middle school as a middle school principal. So I've had an opportunity to work with Pete, I think 14 of my 15 years. So I wish him the very best. I know that he has one grandchild and another grandchild on the way, and he's very much looking forward to spending opportune time with them and everything else. But I just want to say personally, due to the fact I work very closely with the administrative team, I want to thank him personally for everything he's done for the district, for putting his heart and soul into it, and for the leadership that he's brought to not only the middle school staff, but to the district and to all of us administrators and myself personally. So he's always been a team player, and I greatly appreciate a team player on our administrative team. So can't say thank you enough to him. So thanks, Pete. I know you're probably at home watching. I hope you are. So, so with that, I recommend to the board to consider Pete's retirement letter for approval.
I will make the motion to approve the retirement of Peter Sines. If I can,
Did you want to say something else?
with the thanks of the district, and as a parent, with thanks for all he's done.
Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, staffing recommendations.
Lindsay had one in there. Mark, are you going to go over it? Thank you.
All right, I think you have this in your packet here, but it's for the 1.0 FTE elementary music teacher. Again, this is a bittersweet one, simply because this represents the passing of Kathy Trader. However, Kathy and Roger would clearly say the music and the show must go on. So we come to you tonight just sharing with you a little bit about the screening process. There were two candidates that rose to the top, or two candidates that were looked at and screened and considered. Lindsay and Amy actually met with those candidates. We also included Sue Equi, who 40 plus years of elementary music education. She participated by sending us some things to think about as we transition to this new person. So we're happy to share with you tonight that Miss Madison Grumman had accepted the position. She comes highly recommended from her previous school of 3 years in Fond du Lac, has the right certification, and the right disposition and the right attitude for this elementary age student. A quick little caveat is So I meet with our student ambassadors pretty regularly. That's our 5th grade leadership team. And this last week, we had our photographers in, our school pictures, in for candid photos. And so every year I try to find some motivational posters related to character traits. And the students, 5th grade students, came up with the word grateful. And we were debating, like, okay, what would that look like? Like, what would that scene be for grateful? And one of them said, we are grateful for our new music teacher who's here to support us with our new program. So certainly it's mixed emotions as we adjust, but I thought that was really a nice gesture as well too. Madison started the day after Christmas break. I mean, she, after our Christmas break, she was already prepping over the break and ready to go. So we're excited to have her on board. So we ask for your formal approval of this recommendation.
I will make a motion to approve Madison Grumman for the 1.0 FTE elementary music teacher. There'll never be another Kathy, but
That's correct.
the show has to go on.
Yeah.
Any discussion? My kids are really enjoying her class so
Good.
far.
Good.
So,
All right. Thank you.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're down to approval of donations.
Yeah, we have quite a few tonight, so I would say if we could make maybe a motion to approve all of them after we just go through them to give proper recognition.
I'm willing to do that.
All right, great. The first one is Ogden Construction Group. They have provided $200 for our family assistance programs in Battle of Bags, so we thank you very much for that. We have an anonymous donation of $6,500, which the donation will be presented to the school board, obviously, for approval tonight, but they wanted that to remain anonymous, which we can obviously apply that to, and that's for the Community Schools Angel Fund Battle Bags from WE Energies. That was a matching gift, so WE Energies matched the $300 that was originally done by Jessica Fuchs of $300 to the East Troy Community School District. AAT Infrared Incorporation out of Rockford has provided $500 to the high school wrestling program. Mr. Mike Howard has provided $400 to the high school wrestling program. Miss Nancy Forgin of Milwaukee has donated $200 to the high school wrestling program. Chris and Laura Edwards has donated $225 to the high school wrestling program for travel expenses. Jeff and Janine McPherson provided $225 to the high school wrestling program for travel expenses. First Congregational Church of East Troy has provided $500 to the East Troy Community School District. And then we also have received recognition of a Voice Project mini grant application in which our grant amount was awarded of $4,947.25 for ECE Electronic Babies, which was done by Janessa Pluis. So we at this time would like to thank all of those for their donations and for the grant applications provided by Gateway and the work that Janessa did, and ask the board to approve all of those with great gratitude.
I will make the motion to approve the donations that were presented tonight, along with the receipt of the grant listed tonight.
Any discussion?
It's
Can
wonderful.
somebody give just like a 30-second what the battle bags are so that people understand?
Okay, so, anything else? Any other outside? So, to my understanding, this is something that the pupil services team, mostly Kim Pluis, helps coordinate. Battle bags represent, oftentimes we have families that will come to us with specific needs, whether it's paper or pencils or crayons or like school supply needs. So some of the battle bags are included with that. But then I also think there's a food component as well. I feel like there's also some food things.
Yeah, so I would say it's more food than
Okay,
school supplies.
and maybe a pencil?
So I'm not aware of there being school supplies in there, but it's totally possible.
Well, we've got some.
I know we have school supplies, but the battle bags, the battle bags are really a way for us to confidentially provide meals for people in need. So kids and families are able to pick up battle bags and take them home to supply a few meals for families, like over weekends and weeknights and things, times that school wouldn't have meals. So to
That too,
help
that too.
support like that.
Thank you.
Can I add one comment here that I've been wanting to say too? Donations, I don't bring to you scholarship donations because it's not a donation to the school. It gets turned around and delivered to the student. So we had some people question that, and we're working on, in an upcoming newsletter, to do a thank you to all of the scholarship donors. But again, that doesn't come to you for donations. The other thing that doesn't come to you is clubs. They're funded by donations. So whether they are selling candy bars, it's a little bit of an antiquated example there of selling candy bars, but whether they're selling candy bars, we don't list like everybody who bought a candy bar, obviously, or everybody who makes a donation to a club in that fashion.
I got it, Kathy. I think I asked you this before, but do you feel that donations are picking up, getting more?
Yeah, and last month I said no, it was about the same, but we did get, I think, a run here in December that was a little bit higher than normal Decembers. So, yeah.
Do you think the recognition on the electronic boards is helping that situation, or not sure? Or
I haven't heard anybody say I'm donating because my name's on the board, but maybe they are, donating because their name's on the board. I don't know.
I know it's not a trend, but maybe it'll be a trend, an upwards trend, making donations is an excellent way to bring money into the district for no output of expense. And I know that we had some months ago discussion about setting something up at the bank and everything. I don't know whether you want to continue to pursue that or whatever, if we're upticking in donations, create the avenues for more donations. I mean, maybe that's something for discussion in the future.
We can decide if we want that on a future agenda again.
Maybe we could discuss that.
Sure. Let's take a vote on approval of these donations. All in favor? Aye. Benefits presentation, is that moving to closed? Oh, great.
Likewise, appreciate the opportunity. Real quick fun fact, one fun fact, one not so fun. In light of Martin Luther King Day, as well as one of the public notes, when watching the I Have a Dream speech, if you have a broad enough angle, you'll see Coach Raveling, if you remember Coach Raveling, standing next to Martin Luther King. After the speech, by the way, he was a last-minute volunteer, and after the speech, Martin Luther King gave Coach Raveling his original speech. And he kept that for decades and decades, and the comment Coach Raveling would often have is the fact that when he got to the I Have a Dream part of his speech, it did not resemble, he ad-libbed significantly. So I guess where I'm going with this is I'll ad-lib this pretty quickly to hit the high points to create brevity as suggested. The not so fun fact, in a meeting I was in this past week, the Madison School District it was pointed out that the Madison School District has more teacher openings a year than the University of Wisconsin-Madison produces teachers outgoing. And that is a trend that it continues to create the challenge, which one of the earlier points, attracting and retaining educators is getting harder, not easier, and it's not just here, it's everywhere. So in large part of my role for over a decade with East Troy and many other area districts throughout the state is helping balance the planning process of cost, compliance, and culture with school districts largely focused around benefits. And we do a fair amount of benchmarking. We do a lot of benchmarking, Kathy, myself, for, again, over 10 years of just the surrounding districts as well as statewide and regional. And a big part of it is, you know, we need to make sure we're competitive. Unemployment rate is very, very low. Healthcare costs are rising. What are we doing to attract and retain? And the balancing act, cost of benefits. Unfortunately, cost of benefits is going up. Cost of turnover also going up. So it's a big balancing act that we continue to keep our eyes on what is best practices. So a big focal point becomes health insurance in my role. And in weighing health insurance, there's methods that we'll show you, excuse me, in the benchmarking process, which includes the value of the plan, how much it costs to participate. You combine the two and you look at the communication process. We have two plans we offer from a health insurance standpoint. One of which, when we compare to multiple cuts of peer groups, one is more generous and one is below the norm. That's from terms of how much it costs when you have a claim. How much it costs to participate, which one might suspect the rich plan costs more than the norm, and the not so generous plan coverage is less than the norm when we look at both single and family. What's that tell us? We're in a pretty good place overall. When you combine the combination of the two, we're in a pretty good place overall. We're not an extreme outlier in large part in the single plan. The family plan certainly have some opportunity, a little more generous than the norm. And this, again, is a broader cut. So when we look at plan design, offering one plan that's richer than the peer group average, we met that. Offering one that's lower priced than the group norm, we met that. Overall value, you know, we're meeting the benchmarks or the objectives. In the communication piece, we have multiple methods that we communicate with the staff because there's a term used, bad benefits communicated well will outperform good benefits not communicated. So the point of that is that's an evolving process, right? Technology during the pandemic, all the dynamics are changing, so our methods of communicating and making sure staff understand and appreciate what it is we afford from a benefit and how it is we provide it is A, understood, and B, appreciated. Other benefits we look at: dental, disability, life, wellness, voluntary worksite benefits. From a dental, disability, life, we're within the norm on each. We're by no means an outlier in either of those. I would say from a wellness and EAP, while we've exceeded the norm with some of our new offerings from a benefit standpoint, specifically the clinic, the virtual clinic, the NICE clinic, some behavioral health extensions, a real opportunity to continue. There is a void, or I should say there's a supply and demand issue similar to education with primary care physicians, and that access and that behavioral health challenge is a big challenging dynamic that we're all facing, and this new resource is something that can differentiate us and certainly help our staff members more and more. So we're in a, as you can see, we're in a good spot. The yellow means there's certainly, it's probably a faster evolving category that we'll continue to focus on. And population health management, this is the worksite, near site, virtual clinic I was referencing, behavior health and lifestyle. Resources are something that we continue to extend, try to be proactive. When you think of employee assistance program, which I would qualify as not highly used, but really important, we continue to try to integrate that to be more proactive. Last couple of focal points on the health plan. Last year and this year to date. Last year, I know you can't see this, but the summary is when we look at the finances, health coverage with our size, we're credible, which means how are we running claims versus premium and how the health plan looks. Last year, for every dollar we paid in premium, we had 84 cents in claims, and then we have administrative costs, but that's a pretty darn good spot. And I know Kathy in the past, most recently we had reported we're in a pretty good spot in the last year. And then year to date, for every dollar we have in claims, we have $1.19 in expenditures. That's not so good. So we have some work to do when you blend the two, but we have some work to do in that regard, which we have some next steps we'll speak to. The dental plan, I'll summarize by saying for the 2-year period of time, for every dollar, we've had 76 cents in expenditures. Last year, year to date, 78 cents. We're in a good spot. We started self-funding that 2 years ago.
I was going to say a little longer than that, maybe 3 or 4 years ago already.
Which dental makes all the sense in the world to self-fund because there's no such thing as a
Catastrophic event.
correct $1 million prescription or whatever. So as a result, the reserves are kept by the district. So projecting forward timeline, we continue to aggregate our claim data, review it with, you're currently part of an association, Wisconsin County Association. It's certainly a pooled environment. We in addition to going through 2 years of claim reports, we'll begin negotiating process. We include leveraging area districts and reviewing our options, continuing to expand on the clinic. March finalized rates. We do have a rate cap, so when you see that 119 cents for every dollar, our worst case would be a 9.5% cap. So we do have that cap built in. I know this isn't a year anyone wants any 9.5%, but it's certainly better than the alternate could be. And then April, depending on where the district finalizes their decision, April is when we begin open enrollment communications. So, Kathy, any further items you wanted me to do an overview of?
No, we have 2 new board members this year. Al has been instrumental in especially very difficult years where we've had high renewal rates of bringing bids forth of different companies, and the school board has sat in closed sessions regarding those bid negotiations in the past. I will say, he brought it to my attention, I believe that we've bid 4 of the 5 last years. Was that correct? Or
Correct.
Something like that. And the one thing I wanted to bring up is a comment that he made to me that there is fatigue in the bidding process with health insurance companies, that basically if you go out to bid every year, it's a lot of work for them, and if they don't get selected, then they tend to not want to be bid to again the next year. So we do have a rate cap right now of 9.5% with WCAGHT. It might not be the best year to bid, especially because our claims are poor right now. And, again, we have some of the fatigue going on with the bidding process currently with our groups that we would be bidding to. Do you want to clarify anything I said there, Al?
Nope, I think you got it.
So, again, unfortunately, we've had since July 1st some bad claims rates. I don't know how else to put it, and we're going to be seeing what the insurance company brings to us in the next coming months for renewals. But Al works with a lot of districts in the state. Do you know the number?
Collectively over 120.
Yep. So I turn to him for a pulse on, again, what are our neighbors doing? What's the state as a whole doing? Is our benefits package, again, appropriate? Are we skewed too high, too low in any arenas, again, that are either going to help us attract, retain employees versus other school districts? So he, again, in some difficult years where we knew renewals were going to be very, very bad, we've had health insurance committees with the staff also to talk about options. So I guess this is your chance here with Al here. Any questions you have on the benefits that we offer? Should we do an overview of the benefits again for teachers primarily?
I think I brought up the point of long-term disability and the cost of $40,000 a year. And and we got 2 people on it, so.
People on it, that means they're disabled. So it's one of those catastrophic insurance coverages that you don't want people on. Yeah.
It's money that we could use more efficiently, maybe in the form of a Christmas bonus.
Al, can you speak to why districts have long-term disability insurance?
I mean, I don't know of any company that really offers that in the private sector. They offer it, but it's at a cost to the employee.
I'm going to jump in and disagree. Every professional that I know has some either a short-term or long-term disability, and long-term.
Short-term, yes. Short-term is the long-term disability, what we're paying for, $40,000 a year. Chrysler, Target, any large company that I've worked for does not offer that, never has offered it. They offered it at a cost to the employee. We're providing it for free. I'm saying that it's inefficient to spend $40,000 a year, have 2 people on it, when we could take that money and give it to the employee either as a Christmas bonus or whatever so they can enjoy that.
I think we need to understand the whole package that we're offering
I get that. I understand.
before we start swiping at one-off things, just so we're not.
You know, so I'm just saying that it seems to me if I'm looking at the line items and I'm spending 40 grand on an item that our 2 people are on that thing, I'm going to question that and say, hey, that's not very good efficiency. I can utilize that money. Maybe I can use it to attract for a Christmas bonus or up the salary of the teacher or whatever the case may be, but it seems like we could be utilizing that money differently. So prove me wrong, make me wrong in saying that, because I'm looking at this thing, we're spending $40,000 and we got 2 people on it. So make me wrong.
So I would ask that we get a better.
Yep, and that's why Al's here.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Well, we can do 2 things, right?
Yep.
I mean, back on the brevity piece, I can certainly come back and expand on the study in the why. But top of my head, when it comes to long-term disability, I'd say 2 is probably higher than more districts of the size that are collecting from disability from that standpoint. And when you think of the amount of the income replacement, depending on the position of the individuals, could very well exceed 40 grand a year per each individual that they're ultimately collecting. And from a benchmarking standpoint, the norm, we'd be an outlier if we didn't offer it relative to the peer districts. And, does that mean to say there's not, an ongoing review that's appropriate? And I think part of what your point is it the most efficient method of spending 40 grand or not? And, right now, for 2 individuals, I'm thinking that those 2 individuals are probably thinking it's an exceptional way, because had it not been for the coverage, how would they come to the budgetary situation that they'd be in? But beyond that, Kathy, I'm not sure you wanted me to expand on any other specifics?
And just that, when I talked to you about this, it was every public school in the state basically offers it.
We did review, and it was I think all but 2, maybe 3 districts of over 430 school districts in the state. So
So
there
not
is
saying
that.
again that we have to do what everybody else does, but if you're competing for teachers and that is an important benefit for
Well,
some.
would it be better? I mean, I'm just looking at it like, hey, I'm an employee here at the East Troy School, you know, and they're offering me this long-term disability. I'm not gonna use it, but I sure could use a $100 Christmas bonus, you know. I'm just saying there's probably more efficient use of that money. Not that we would not offer it to whoever wants to pay for it, we should offer it to that. And that's the case with larger industries. They offer it, but it has cost to the employee. And the other employees that choose not to buy it, don't buy it. And maybe we compensate them with a Christmas bonus. Maybe they like that better. At least they're getting some of the money back. And we're saving some of the money too.
Yeah, well, we could say that with every insurance. We could say that with life insurance. We could say that with dental insurance. Some are gonna say, I don't use the dental insurance. Let's cut that from the program. I just worry if we get too,
But we only have two people on it.
We have 2 people
But-
who are taking claims.
that are making claims, yes.
The
The
that are-
staff is on it.
The staff is, I know the staff is on it, but we have 2 people that are taking claims, so it's being utilized by 2 people of the whole district.
Because you don't want your staff
We don't want
disabled.
that, so if somebody wants, I'm just saying, if when I work with Chrysler or Target or whatever, if I want long-term disability and I feel that I need that, I pay, what, $9-10 a month for the thing, you know, then I'm covered, you know? And here, we're providing it for 40 grand a year, where we could say, hey, we take that 40 grand a year and we could spend maybe $200 apiece, maybe we give $100 for a Christmas bonus, and the district keeps $100, so we're 20 grand ahead, and the teachers are 20 grand ahead.
Is there a time when we can review our benefits and how they compare to our, within 20-mile neighbors, to say we're competitive in here, you talked about it, but I'm asking you to go down one level.
Granular level.
Not maybe granular, but
Nope,
just
but-
down one more level and
Yep.
say, this is what it really looks like.
Maybe it's East Troy, hey, East Troy's great, they're offering a Christmas bonus. No other district around here is offering a Christmas bonus. We can offer a Christmas bonus because we've saved some money someplace else. To me, it looks like efficiency. Review the line items on the budget and determine how efficiently you're spending your money. That's all I'm saying.
So, to answer your question, yes. And the second part might be, what I would propose is, as we get close to open enrollment, the summary opportunity would be, if their contribution level, if you have a contribution level to disability, where would that put you relative to your peers, right? I think is what you're getting at for disability, or dental, or some of the other categories. So we can go through the 3 or 4 main budget items from a benefits in both the plan, the contribution, and the eligibility.
You might have said this, and I apologize. When is the decision point of if we're going out to bid for, new providers versus just getting rates for who we're working with today?
You'd want to start that effectively end of January, so that in February we'd go through the entire process if you were fully bidding. But February is the month that we go through and negotiate with the carriers.
I would like to see something that's a win for the employee, that they're happy with and very happy with, and also a win for the district. So it's a two-way street.
So has the decision already been made to hold off on bids this year due to the factors you stated, Kathy, or is that?
Yes, so that's where I was leaning, is that this was not the year to bid. We have a second-year rate cap, which we often do not have. We are running poorly at this point in time, so our rates would not be something that will attract great rates. I mean, when our rates were running well, the other competitors were higher priced than what we were getting, so. And then again, Al shared with me a few months ago that because we've gone back to the same, providers that will provide health insurance coverage in this area over and over, there's a limit as to how many times they'll go through all the work to do the bidding, with good results.
Yeah, I mean, if we're costing the insurance company 20% more than we're paying in, we're not gonna like the renewals that we get offered, and I would agree.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Was there anything else you wanted to share tonight?
I have nothing else.
Okay.
You started working with our district, which was moons ago, and I appreciate that, because I knew you even before working with our district. And I'll never forget when you were just meeting with our staff early on, and you simplified it to, look, I'm trying to help your district with the 3 Ps. And anybody who knows me always knows I like that kind of stuff. But you said, look, we've got to continue to look at various providers, and we've got to try to always make sure that we're negotiating and finding the best provider for you guys for the plan design, which is the second P, and the price. So he says provider, plan design, price. And we've got to continue to focus on those 3 things all the time for the benefit of the East Ray School District. I appreciate that. It makes total sense, and it was simplified right there. And I've heard other people mention that before. So those 3 Ps resonated. And to this day, I remember those 3 Ps. When Kathy and I talk, and she'll say, you guys have been talking, I'm like, take me through the 3 Ps. And that's what it comes down to, right? And from a standpoint of us being competitive, too, right? Obviously, we have structural deficits. And most districts that you're dealing with are dealing with the same things we are. But from the standpoint of, we're in a competitive market, too. So how does that, it's kind of like what we said. You can operate a school down to 1 classroom, if that's ultimately what we want in East Troy. We can have 1 classroom. We could have 1 building, if that's where we ultimately want to take something, primarily offering 1 program. I mean, you can offer as little as we want, but the reality is we can also do that with our plan design. We can offer as little as we want, but how does that fare in regards to being competitive with the market of other educational institutions, and not just educational institutions? Your point is well stated at the beginning. We're not losing educators to education. We're losing education to all of their fields. They're not going into education. That is the challenge. We're not just battling school districts. We're battling all markets, and we have to be competitive. So I think it's just a great thing for us to continue to look at that, looking at all providers, which you really have done well with us and helping us. And we always have looked at price and plan, but the balance of we can save as much as we want with health insurance, but we've got to make sure that the plan is going to continue to retain quality staff and attract quality staff. Or else, I will say it, I mean, let's just be honest, or else let's strike it from our district goals, because it's one of our 6, and just strike it, because it's very difficult continue to try to meet the 6 district goals when we don't always necessarily put the actions to support them.
Thank you for coming.
We can figure out another date, I think, to take you guys up on breaking down the maybe comparables and all that. Is that what you're hoping, Anna? Maybe to see?
Yeah,
ultimately?
I didn't want to take one section of the benefits and, rip into it without understanding the whole picture. I think it's...
That'd be great. Thank you. Safe trip.
Next is the operational guide for discussion and possible action.
I'll try to be as succinct as possible on this, and then answer the question. So what we have is, obviously, we want to talk about the length of the current quarantine for students and staff, and current staff sick days. So these have become challenges as of late, and not really as of late, but I think everybody's quite aware that on the staff side, right, we are battling shortages. From a standpoint of staff being out sick, not just due to COVID, but other absences, and so that's one of the difficulties, especially when a staff member is testing positive or has an in-household close contact and is not vaccinated. Then under the current policy, right, they're out for 10 days. And as anybody knows, if you look at some of our data, which I have here, I'll try to just hit on a couple key points really quick. I apologize, there's a lot of paperwork to all this one. But we have had, since 12/29 to the 14th of January, we've had, just in that time frame, for December 29th to January 14th, 24 staff have been out due to COVID-related reasons, not even other absences. So up to this point in time this year, we have had 71 staff members out to COVID-related reasons. To give you an idea, I went back and looked at it from an absence standpoint, from absences. January 3rd to January 7th, we were at 4, and that's just a week, right? 47 and a half sick days were being used. On December 6th through December 10th, we had 35 and a half sick days being used. And so I tried to look at that. We are always within basically a 30 to 40, mid-40s of sick day usage being used over a 5-day period of time right now. The lowest I saw was back in October, and don't quote me on it, but back in October there was 1 week where we were at like 16 for the week for 16 sick days used. And those do not include, those absences don't include like personal days, emergency days, or doc days that might have had to be incurred by the employee. The other thing is, obviously, we are beginning to try and do more and more coverage of this because of the shortages. So our staff's having to do double time in a way, and that is, the principals can speak more to it, but we're covering within, right? So they might have to be covering for class periods within our current staff because we don't have, we have a sub shortage, just like other shortages. So, so we're not always to fill all the vacancies that we have in that day or week. So then we're filling within our current staff from either prep hours are being lost, right? Supervision hours are being lost and reorganized for us to cover a specific class. And that's happening at all of the buildings. They can speak more to it. But from December 1st to the present, on average, such as like Prairie View, they've been needing 6 subs per week. And let's not forget, this is with us having 2 full-time substitute teachers in our district that we're paying for full-time, right? And last year we had 4. We cut it down to 2 because obviously of budget issues and everything else. We thought we could scale it back. We thought we had to scale back even though we didn't really want to. We had to make a difficult choice. So we went from 4 to 2. And we still have our full-time, right, our health aides that we are utilizing daily all the time to assist us with the tracking and monitoring of illness and COVID-like symptoms and everything else. The middle school is averaging 1.5 subs per day, so about 7.5 per week. In the last 31 days, 7 of those 31 days, 7 days had to be filled from staff within by hour to hour for teachers. Of the 31, 7 of those days were done by any sub that was needed was done within house, and teachers going from period to period. At the high school, there's been, and this is December 1st when I say that, right? December 1st to the present. I wasn't gonna do it in the whole year. 29 days from December 1st to the current date. 29 days where a regular sub was called in. 44 periods were filled from within the high school, from within the staff. 21 times there was coverage being done by combining classes or duties or shifting duties for aides, having classes report to the library, et cetera, for just at least maybe even 1 period. So those are examples. Little Prairie's kind of in that same boat. So those are examples of what we're trying to do and the challenges, right? And it is no different if somebody were to say, what's going on in East Troy? I haven't seen a school district who's not struggling with shortages in bus drivers to food service to custodians to the teachers. And so we're all of us superintendents have been talking about these things, like, what are you doing in this district? What are you doing? Some districts have really upped their sub pay. They've taken it to a new level. The question is that we say, can you afford that? And they're like, probably not, but we can't afford not having teachers either. What I'm interested in knowing in the next couple of weeks with those districts that have done it, have they noticed a difference? Because if there's just not people, there's just not people. It might not be about the pay. So I plan on following up with those districts who have gone up $50 a day or more for subs. And I'm not talking $50. We're talking they added $50 onto what they already were. So I'll be interested to see if those districts have had success with that. Was it a money issue? I tend to lean towards it's not. I think it's a shortage issue, and I think it's a COVID issue of people not wanting to sub while the pandemic's still going on. They just don't feel it's worth it to come into the school facility. Maybe I'm wrong. So I will follow up with them. Anyways, going back to everything, that's kind of what we're trying to deal with. So a couple things. We want kids to have the highest quality instruction. So that kind of goes to our virtual too, right? That we're saying in person, we want in-person learning. But we also believe being with the teacher is maybe the highest quality, not maybe, it is the highest quality instruction. I believe strongly that kids are going to get better instruction with their regular teacher, even if that teacher has to be teaching virtually because they're home for a certain period of time, than they will possibly by a substitute that's not even honestly licensed to be in that subject and discipline. Right? Let's be blunt. They're more of a supervisor and managing a classroom at that point in time. I'm not saying we have that with all subs, but we have that. I would be denying it if we don't. We have basically, let's manage the day or days. So we had to look at this from a multitude of different ways. So in your packet, you'll see we've offered a couple things. Let's go first off what we're recommending for changes in the booklet, in the operational guide. Currently, you heard me say, we are 10 days if you test positive, that you're out for 10 days, or if you have an in-household exposure and not vaccinated, it's 10 days. We're recommending that actually gets reduced. That is a recommendation from the CDC. We're following the CDC on it for a lot of various reasons, but we say, and you'll see in the summary, we state, if you test positive for COVID-19, you're going to isolate, just like we've been saying. Nothing's changing there, but this is for everybody, just like it was. But it's staying at home for 5 days from the onset of your COVID suspected symptoms or COVID positive tests if asymptomatic. Same as what we've been doing, except we're saying 5 days. If you have no symptoms or symptoms are resolved after 5 days, you now can return to school/work. So you can return. So it's not 10, it's 5. You can return, and we're applying that to students and staff. But if you are to return because you don't either have the symptoms or they have been resolved, then you are required to wear a well-fitting mask for the next 5 additional days. If you have a fever, obviously you need to continue to stay at home until the fever resolves itself. If you are unwilling or unable, whatever the reason, to wear a mask while at school, then you still would have to isolate yourself home through the 10-day, which is the current practice right now. It's the current practice. So we're not changing anything drastically on anybody. We're actually trying to get people back sooner. But if they're coming back sooner, and that's a CDC guideline, if they're coming back sooner, we're also saying, look, if you're going to take advantage of not doing the 10, but doing the 5, then we also are saying we're following what has been recommended, and that recommendation is to have a mask worn for the next 5. If people aren't comfortable with that, don't want that, so be it. No problem here. But then you do what is already in place, and it's the 10 days. I mean, that's what's in our guide right now, is 10 days. So this would allow staff and our students to come back earlier under these cases. It would allow our staff that's been quarantined in different situations, obviously for positivity or in-house, to come back sooner and to be in the classroom with their kids doing in-person learning instead of being out 10 days. It'll assist us on many levels, many levels. And if you want to reference, so that would be on pages 13 and 14 in the current operational guide. That's also in your packets, but it would be in pages 13 and 14 is what would reference that right now. If you are a close contact to somebody with COVID, so in your household, right? We're not quarantining close contacts as we did last year. We've just been dealing with in-household close contacts. If you are vaccinated, which is what we've been, all right? If you are vaccinated, the same has been, all right? So this is what we've been saying. You may return to work, school. Face covering is optional. If you develop COVID symptoms, suspect symptoms, go get a test, stay at home. Nothing's changed. That's in our booklet. That's where it is, and that's on page 16, I believe, if you're looking in the operational guide. If you are not vaccinated in household, instead of being in 10 days, we're saying you stay home for 5 days from the date of the positive person's onset of symptoms again, or positive test, whichever came first. If you have no symptoms after 5 days, come back to school. Come back to school. Instead of being 10 days, come back. And this goes for, again, staff and students. You are required, though, to wear a well-fitted mask around others for those additional 5 days. If you are. So you're coming back to school for those, but you are going to have to wear a well-fitted mask, again, face covering. And test on day 5 if possible. It's a recommendation. If possible, we say go get tested. Especially, we provide it. If you develop COVID symptoms, go get a test and stay home. If you're unwilling or unable to wear this mask, if you're in-house exposure, and you're like, well, I'd love to come back after 5 days, but I don't want to wear a face covering, then we're still going to say, well, then you're going to do the 10 days. So same as what we have. You're going to still do the 10 days. So those are the things that we're trying to take on the staff and students. We really, to be honest, we're looking at this strongly from a staff perspective first when we were doing this. And then we said, we need to look at this from a student perspective too. But it originated from our staff lens. And with the shortages we were having, and with the concerns about ensuring our students were always getting the quality instructions from the best teachers, which is their daily, regular teachers. Which then takes us to the next point on the sheet that's on your board packet, and that's the virtual teaching. We want in-person learning. We want that to continue to be, but if it's at a cost of, it's just a person managing a classroom as a sub, or their regular teacher who's home asymptomatic is begging us that they can do the virtual teaching, and that they're well enough to do it. They're not being told to do it by us. They're wanting to do it. We sat down and we were having a really hard time saying, boy, and we're going to continue to tell them don't do it. Don't do that. Don't do the virtual learning for your kids. And even though you want to do it, it's going to be quality instruction, possibly, and everything else. It's a struggle, right? And I know the board understands this greatly, and that is encouraging teachers. The last thing I ever want to do, and I know all the building level and all these district office level, the last thing we ever want to do is encourage a teacher to be teaching while they're sick. We are not about that, and we do not want to do that. But when the teacher is telling us, I can do this, I'm asymptomatic, I don't have anything, I happen to have an in-house exposure, and I've been identified now as a close contact to somebody in my house, and I've got to stay home per your practices right now and right now it's 10 days unless we adopt this tonight, and then it would be 5, and then they come back wearing their mask for the additional 5. Then we're like, we want to get them to the kids. We want to get them back quicker to the kids, and let's get them to the kids while they're even home through our virtual live streaming. So we're not forcing this upon anybody, but we just want to open that door a little bit more and a little more consistently. This would not be allowed for the 4K through 2. And it's not because of anything but more than we've already made that commitment that 4K through 2 was not doing virtual live streaming as an option to be given only if it was through COVID. And obviously, Lindsay has spoken to this very well, and that is the difficulty at that level. So it would not be provided still at that level. And I know that some people look at that, let's just call it the way it is. Some people probably look at that like, well, I agree with that, but I really would like to have the option because I don't want to possibly have to use a sick day. I get it. I don't know how else to say this, so the administration team hears me say it all the time, so I would be not truthful if I don't say it here and I say it behind closed doors to them. Fair is not always equal and equal is not always fair. I say it all the time. It's not because we try to be unfair, but it's just the realities when you're dealing with different age levels and different buildings and staff and disciplines that, you know, we have these discussions all the time at board levels, really. I mean, just fair is not always going to be equal. And just because something is equal doesn't mean it's necessarily fair. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily the best practice. So it wouldn't be allowed at 4K through 2 is our recommendation. But what we would say is it's going to be determined by building level principle. Last thing I want to do is get into that world and be determining it. And like, once you start applying it with one blanket generalization statement, now I think you are probably breaking the fair and equal thing because you're applying it to everybody equally. And we know that doesn't work well. So the principals would decide looking at it by a subject area, grade level, quality of instructor. Let's be honest. Some people do better with virtual live streaming than others. Sometimes because it's just the discipline that lends itself to it. And other times, yes. Other people just are better at it, right? So, and then we also, I don't know how to say it, distractions at home, environmental factors. I can think of a time in my life where I would not have been able to do virtual live streaming at home nearly as well, probably, based upon possibly what was going on in my house at the time and whether or not I could have devoted all the time to my students while I'm at home. So all those things would be considered by the building level administrator at a 3 through 12th grade level towards determining can virtual live stream happen at a good quality instructional pace for those 5 days, if this were to be approved tonight, for those 5 days, if the teacher's interested in it. So the other thing is, we do want to denote it that our recommendation is off of that still 0.25 sick day would still be deducted for virtual work at home. And our rationale is that due to the inability to still complete, you're not in person, right? You're not here. So it's still going to be the inability to do tasks such as supervision and other district needs, and obviously the likely need for the substitute still for management of the classroom that we have to pay for. And so we've got to still be able to cover that cost to a degree. So we would love to not be utilizing sick days for our staff that's having to stay home because of an operational guide that's telling them they have to be home. I get it. In the past, they would try to fight through that sick day, not getting others hopefully sick, but they would push through it because they wanted to be here first and foremost for the benefit of the kids. But they probably didn't want to take sick day either. I get it. Been there. Done that in the past. But now we're saying, look, we'll work with you if you want to do the virtual. If you want to do the virtual, we'll work with you. But 0.25 still would be deducted of a sick day. 0.25, not 1.0, as it has been doing, as it has been happening up to this point in time. It's been sick days having to be used. So we would do 0.25 if they're doing virtual. Now, if they choose to say, I don't want to do the virtual live stream when I'm home for those 5 days, right now currently 10, it would not be forced upon anybody. But then it would be sick days being used, 1.0 sick days each day while they're home. And then the final one, which was a big one by the building level administrators, and I couldn't agree more with, and that is the decision to do this has to be determined before they're gone on that leave. So we're not going to go in and out over the 5 days. In the virtual 1 day live streaming, not doing the next. Obviously, if they're asymptomatic and they call up saying, I become symptomatic, we're obviously going to adjust that, right? But we're saying if they remained asymptomatic the whole time, we're not going to have them going in and out. We're either committing to virtual live streaming for those students for the 5 days or not for consistency purposes. So those are our recommendations that we're asking the board to consider to assist us with having our staff being able to provide that quality instruction if they so elect to and if they're able to due to their health, and B, assisting us with staff shortages, and C, we thought we needed to apply those same practices to our students. If we're going to allow our staff to come back sooner, our students should be allowed to come back sooner too.
I will make the motion to accept the administration's recommendations for changes to the operational guide.
I'll second. Any discussion?
Chris, why are we differentiating on close contact between vaccinated and non-vaccinated?
Or not? Are you all right or not? I mean,
So the reason is because if you're vaccinated and you're living in the home, or if you're vaccinated in general and you're exposed, your chances are less that you'll get sick. So right now, our vaccinated family members do not have to stay home at all if they have a positive in the household, if they're not experiencing symptoms. Right now, they can just come to work as normal as long as they're monitoring themselves. So that's not changing anything for them.
But they
What
can
it's-
still carry the virus.
Hmm?
If they're vaccinated, they can still carry the virus and bring it back to school.
They could, yes,
Okay.
it's possible. But that was the decision that was made at the beginning of the year, was that if people were vaccinated, that was the decision and the recommendations that were made and accepted. So while that's true and very possible, especially with Omicron, it seems to be more contagious, thankfully less severe for most people, but more contagious, so a lot of people are getting it. But if you're not vaccinated right now, if you're living in a home with someone and you're not vaccinated, you're staying home for 10 days while your family member's home as well. So this is the option of really the only thing we're changing is letting those people come back sooner than we were before. Same as the people with that were identified as positive. It's kind of the same thing. We're not really changing anything for those people that were already coming. It's shortening the length for those that are exposed that are now currently out for a longer period of time. We're now shortening that to allow them back sooner as long as they're deeming themselves well and they're willing to follow the guidance.
We're
We
also
didn't
requiring
distinguish
to wear
more,
masks.
just so it's clear, Stephen, I don't think you're asking us, but I just want to make sure that it's not being implied by us, and maybe I misspoke. So for that in-household contact, close contact, we are not distinguishing between vaccinated and unvaccinated more than what we did in the guidebook. We're actually lessening that due to the fact in our current guidebook, vaccinated can come back right immediately, and the unvaccinated was 10 days. So we've actually, we've made it closer by saying the unvaccinated now would be 5 days.
But they could come back in 10 days without a mask. Now you're saying 5 days with a mask.
Yes.
Or 10
So
days
that is a
without.
big difference to me.
Well, otherwise they can stay doing what they're doing currently and being out for the 10 and not having a mask when they come back, which is what we're currently.
Or we don't require them to wear a mask after 5 days. That is the other option.
Right. But I'm just saying in what our recommendation was, it's allowing for that if they want, but otherwise it's staying the same.
What's the requirement, I'm sorry, what's the requirement for the student? I'm kind of missing that part.
This would be for staff or students, depending on if you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. So if you're a sibling, right? You and I are brother and sister, I'm sick, you're not vaccinated, and you're my sibling, you're home for my 10 days. If you're my parent and you're not vaccinated, you're still home for my 10 days right now. So this is what would go in place instead of that, would be the 5 days as long as you remain well, and then you're willing to wear a mask when you come back. And again, that's your discussion to have, the mask part, but I'm just saying that's the difference, and that's why the difference.
For me, I don't really like to see a student with a mask on. I know it's not really something that the parents want.
Yeah, and that's definitely, like I said, that's definitely a discussion that you guys can have, and then ultimately, it's the parents' decision. If that is adopted, they still have that option of keeping their kid home or sending them with a mask. Or again, if that's not what's approved, then they have that option, whatever you guys do, accept.
Yeah, I mean, this is just giving parents more choice. And I mean, that's what the conversation has centered around from the beginning.
Right.
And if they are uncomfortable with their child wearing a mask, they can follow current, what's effectively current protocol. I mean,
If we change it from required to recommended, I'm fine, as far as a mask.
Can I also just add one thing in here that we didn't, is that if they've had a positive case within 90 days themselves, they also right now aren't quarantining if they're not symptomatic. Just so, that's just not in here, and I just thought I should at least add that, because that is something that, with our numbers being as high as they are this year, that affects a lot more people than it did last year. So.
yeah. Do we need an amendment to take into account the COVID? Okay, you can just make that adjustment?
Yeah, because it's already in our operational guide,
Okay.
as is.
I guess I'm curious how the monitoring of the mask wearers, I mean, what's that actually going to look like on a day-to-day basis?
As well as how do we monitor a fifth grader if they're vaccinated or not vaccinated?
Yeah, I mean, the vaccination information, we usually work with Janet on that. I mean, the family discloses that to us. That is a key point. I think that is a real challenge for us. That's why we need to make sure whatever the policy that is agreed upon, we can move forward with that practice. If it is day 6, day 7, I think that is, I'm just going to speak from a administrative perspective. That is challenging to ask the teacher, okay, Johnny is now on day 7, Susie is on day 6. That, I think that's a burden. That is difficult.
We talked about, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We talked about in our admin meeting that we would track it in the attendance. So just like currently there is a V if the student is virtual, that way the teacher knows that the student will be joining live. We would work with Lisa Dragata and have an attendance code where it would be marked, I'm just gonna use F for face covering in attendance, so then we would know that the teachers would know that child was to have a face covering on in class. There are passing times that are difficult, right? Like in the hallway, I mean, who's monitoring that? Lunch, you know, those types of discussions, but in class, we would monitor it through attendance, at least at the high school.
Yeah, and I'm not so worried about that monitoring as it is in the classroom, the teacher constantly potentially having to remind that student, mask up, mask up. I think that's a real challenge.
I do too. I'm not upset about asking kids to wear a mask to return early, but I don't know how well it would actually be executed for it to be effective in, you know, providing extra safety. So that's the sticking point to me. My kids have been going to school with face coverings for a few months now, and I have no idea if they wear them all day. I'm sure they don't, because I'm not there and it's not required, and I'm certainly not asking their teachers to nag on them all day. That's not their job right now. So I don't know how well that would actually occur during the, you know, some kids would follow it very closely and others would not.
I'm with Steve. If it's a recommendation, fine, but not you have to. That way it's kind of takes the burden off of the school, the parents too.
Well, it takes the burden off the school in terms of having to address the masking issue, but it places a burden back on the school in terms of staff. It puts a burden back on the other students in the classroom. You know, how?
Yeah.
Well, if a student comes back in at day 6 and is asymptomatic but carrying, it places the students around them in danger. And the whole crux of this discussion starts with staff. You know, again, let's take a 4th grade student who's up asking for help with their math. We can't socially distance effectively and do those kinds of things. We can't afford to lose teachers right now. I mean,
I agree we can't afford to lose teachers, and I agree that we should bring them back sooner. It's better to bring them back sooner. Of course, it's better for the students to bring them back sooner.
But that same student could be vaccinated and come back right away because his sister has COVID at home and be asymptomatic and transmit it around the whole classroom.
Yeah, it's going to be something
So
that, especially with the hour, I don't think you're going to control it with masks to begin with. Masks are, in my opinion, this is my opinion, are useless. But, you know, unless it's an N95 or a respirator, and your kid, the little kids are going to take them down. So, I mean, I think we're going the wrong direction on that.
the big issue with the vaccination is there's information out of Washington this week, their Department of Public Health. Vaccinated students, or vaccinated, let me read it straight from their page. Between the ages of 12 and 34, unvaccinated individuals are 3 times more likely to get COVID-19 as compared with fully vaccinated. So the issue is, again, there's no silver bullet. We can't make it go away. We know that. But we can improve our odds. And that's always been what this is about. It's about how do we improve our odds? How do we give ourselves the best chance of staying in school in person going forward?
You're not gonna get me to agree to that.
Okay.
I don't care what CDC or WHO or whoever, and nobody that I voted for making all these rules, so.
Yeah, I would, those people could tell me to use daylight out, I wouldn't believe them to begin with either.
I think we have to trust people to do the right thing.
The CDC and all those people in Washington have flip-flopped so much that it's hard to say what they, what is right or wrong with that, you know? So.
But medical science isn't a static.
Can I talk about the student and staff discussion that we had and why this was our
Thank you.
recommendation? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So at the high school, when we first started talking about looking at the 5 days and masks, it was for, under the guise of for staff, to bring staff back. And I was the one in the meeting, if I recall, that said something to the effect of, well, with having adult age, young adult age students, trying to explain to students why staff can come back with 5 days and masks and why they can't could be difficult. Could we look at possibly adding students into that conversation? But based upon some of the dialogue I'm hearing, maybe it would be fair to try to separate those issues and trying to deal with the staff issue first and perhaps the student issue second. Just a thought.
That may be.
Yeah, and Stace, I appreciate you coming up and saying that, and absolutely, if the board wants to separate those two, that's fine, because, I mean, we're trying to deal with the structural shortage, and and we're talking about for staff, they are our employees, right? We're all employees, so we can be directed. And so you want to come back after the 5th day, you're wearing the mask, right? We're directing you. Like, if you want to come back, you're wearing the mask, or you're staying home and you're taking additional sick days. Or maybe you're still doing the virtual, but you're getting 0.25 docked every day. I mean, so we can do that. I think Stacy's point, she brought it up, but we all had a great dialogue on it. So, and that's why we brought this forward, because absolutely, I mean, you guys have a right to resolve this and take it in whichever direction you want. But, I think for the kids' sake, I really believe the kids, if they see the staff getting it, I just play it out. We kind of played it out that day. So let's just, I mean, I know it sounds a little melodramatic, but I don't think anything's melodramatic in today's world. All of a sudden regionals come up for girls or boys basketball or whatever else, but I'm just using those two examples. And we have in-household close contact, right? And the young man or young woman could come back after, they come to us saying, I want to come back, it's my 5th day, I want to come back tomorrow, it's regionals tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And we go, no, it's only for staff. I just, right, we're not going to budge. We're not going to budge and say, well, it's 6th day. And that's not our practice. Practice is 10. So you're doing 10. And that's the way we have to operate. We can't go here and there. So our whole process was, if we're going to do that for staff, it's hard to look at kids and go, sorry, you're going to miss your senior regional game, even though we're allowing staff to do that. And especially if the young man or young female student is saying, I'll wear the mask in the 6th day. Why are you telling me I can't? That's our point. Like, we're giving them the choice. If they don't wanna, then they gotta follow the protocol. But if they want to, they could participate in the event and wear the mask.
And we could give them the choice to wear a mask or not wear a mask. Staff as well.
Yeah,
Janet, do you have any?
You could go that way. I think it's a big move from where we're at, Steve, and it's a big step from where we're at, and I think a lot of our employees will be concerned about going from 10 to 5 and not having the mask be required for the additional 5 days after. I think they would be concerned we're opening up a Pandora's box more. And I understand we can get into, but what's happening with kids and adults with the current virus as compared to the variant and the other one. Out of my league, you know, I have my opinions, but my opinions don't matter in regards to that. But I mean, our data does say, right, that, I mean, we're at 288 positive cases in our district at this time. I can't even recall last year, what were we, 160 something at the end of the year? So I just feel like, I think it's gonna be a double-edged sword if we do that, if it's to help our staff shortages, because I don't know if it's gonna help our staff shortages. I think we might have more staff testing positive, and then we're gonna lose them more.
Could we
And
do
so
some-
what our intention was, I think now will backfire.
So can we do something like, just asking, the staff, bring them back in 5 days, require them to wear something like an N95 mask for those additional 5 days. And on the students, make that decision to the parents. The parents want them back after 5 days and they want to say, hey, I want my kid back in school 5 days, I'm willing to make them wear a mask, then they come back in 5 days. If the parents say, hey, I don't want my kid to wear a mask, then we say, hey, 10 days. Something like that would work?
That's pretty much, I think, what we have. I think.
Yep.
Okay. But for staff, is that a little different? Well, yes, after the 5 days, but wear an N95 mask rather than I think there's more protection with an N95 mask than with these cloth masks that we're wearing.
If we do an N95, we have to have a respiratory plan approved by a provider. So we could definitely do that, but that would be probably at a cost to us.
No.
And we'd have to make sure that we can get the supply and that we have like a whole respiratory protocol in place.
So we just can't give them an N95 mask and wear it?
Not just let them wear them. We can order like the KN95s that don't have that aren't certified. That's what the testing supply kits come with. Like that's what I wear when I test kids.
Yeah.
So we could potentially do something like that, but an N95 has a very specific set of like OSHA requirements and regulations all around that.
Okay.
Yeah, the process to fit an N95 mask is pretty significant.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
So let's go with.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I didn't know we had to have all of that either because
How about the other one you mentioned,
I don't think
K90?
you have to have any. No, those you can just put.
But again, I'll go back to, and I agree with what Stacy said. I mean, if this is something that you guys are like, you know, it's, you feel that, you know, you'd like to have all 5 board members here with 10 not being here tonight, further discussion on it, by all means, we can have that. But I would ask, could we separate out at least the staff tonight and have the staff one? So we stay with the current operational guide language at this point in time, but change it for the staff for what we're proposing, with further discussion to happen on the student side in February. I mean, if that's the way, if that's what would make, I mean, whatever, again, it can be applied a million ways. I just would really like to have the staff one for sure, heavily discussed, whether or not even voted on tonight. If that doesn't get through, then it doesn't get through either. But to allow the staff an opportunity to come back after 5 days, but with mask worn for the next 5 days, and to allow them to begin doing virtual live stream at home, again, if they're willing, asymptomatic, able to do it, and building level principals believe that it's going to be quality for the discipline and teacher that's involved in other stipulations that we went over.
Are we supplying the KN95s for staff?
No, not at this time.
Are we planning on it?
I
I'm not worried about the cost. If they want to come back and can't find a KN95.
I don't think that was, Jan, we weren't requiring,
No.
we were just kind of recommending it,
No, I was
Steve.
just responding to.
Yeah, Steve, it wasn't, right now, it's not being required, it was just a thing that we were,
It says right here.
Well fitting.
Yeah, surgical mask or a KN95 says right here, right?
Surgical mask or KN95 is recommended.
Right.
Required is just a well-fitting mask. That's all we're requiring.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on what's written here in front of us, which would be the same essentially for staff and students.
So based on the discussion and just generally what I'm hearing, I'd like to amend the motion that we accept the administration's recommendations, but only as it relates to staff and not to students at this time.
I mean, I'd be in favor, if we're gonna do it, let's do it for everybody. I can't differentiate between the two, and I'm willing to go along, but I'd like to look at this again in 30 days. Yes.
I was going to suggest the same thing. I mean, we've kind of been gradually.
We need the staff, let's get that part
Yeah.
settled, and if the student part of it is part of it, I'm fine with that. Let's look at it in 30 days, and maybe it needs to be changed, maybe it doesn't, but let's get them back sooner.
Great. Are we ready to take a vote?
Please strike the amendment.
Okay.
So I got confused there. So the amendment was only for staff and not students, but now we're striking that?
Let's strike the amendment. Yep, correct. So this would cover all staff and students in the building.
Okay. Motion to approve the language as presented.
Correct.
Please.
All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That sounds great.
And the administration's probably gonna be leaving even probably to do this, because we have staff members that literally will be completing their 5th day today. So based upon this, they will be notified tonight that they can return tomorrow if meeting the necessary, no fever, and they're asymptomatic and everything else, or improved, they're improved, they can come back tomorrow. So we'll be contacting people quite a bit tonight already, just so everybody's aware.
I
Could
guess
have
we
used
didn't
that as a
discuss
bargaining chip, you know.
What's that?
Could have used that as a bargaining chip for us to vote on this.
I mean, it's effective immediately, right? We didn't talk about, sometimes it's like effective on Monday.
Yeah, no, effective immediately. So that was our goal, even to let people know tonight, when we've been notifying them of their leave on, either a positive or a in household close contact. We've been putting into the verbiage already that at tonight's board meeting, it could alter the date in which you can return. So.
Okay, next is open enrollment space calculation and determination, policy 425.
Do you want to do this one? Just kidding.
Yes. So on page 69, I believe it is in your packets, you'll see the special education open enrollment space calculations for the 2022 to 2023 school year. So you'll see on the last column that I have there that there aren't any spaces available for open enrollment. If you look at the projected enrollment in the middle of that table, that's the number, it's as best as we can make projections right now for the different grade levels and buildings and services that we provide that we're anticipating for next year. And the capacity is in the column to the left. So a couple things that I wanted to point out is that at the middle school and high school in particular, our current enrollment projections based on current enrollment, so projections for next year, would actually indicate that we don't currently have enough staff to meet those needs. So the middle school in particular, we had a reduction at the middle school, and the needs there are higher than other areas. So no spaces there, but beyond not having spaces, I wanted you to see that the trend with projections would indicate that we don't have enough staff to meet those needs well either. So based on current numbers and looking forward to next year, I would say no spaces for any area of special education.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding this table correctly. There's a maximum capacity for each grades broken out. projected enrollment, and then number of spaces to reserve. So is that in addition to the projected enrollment?
Yeah, so good question. It would be that, like, so if you look at early childhood, that we're projected to have 6 students in that area. Typically, I would reserve 4 spaces for resident growth. That doesn't mean necessarily that we could have 10 in early childhood, but just if we had 2 students that we were projecting enrollment for, that then we would maybe have some space. So there's certain areas that we're more likely to get new referrals in each year, like early childhood, speech and language. The younger students is usually where we start to get more referrals. So there's always resident growth in some of those areas. So that's why like 4K through 2nd grade has a higher number of spaces that I would reserve for resident growth than some of the other levels.
So from the reserve for resident growth, hence it goes into why there's not spaces available for open enrollment for students with disabilities. So if you take the middle school, right, I'm just saying this out loud to make sure I understand it too, Kate, and to help everybody else who's watching. So middle school, the maximum capacity, 26, 2 FTEs, so 13, but the projected enrollment right now is not 26 of the maximum capacity, it's 37. And with number of spaces to reserve for resident growth is another additional 6. So you could be actually looking at possibly 20 plus students for the middle school per FTE instead of the ideal 13 per FTE. You'd be looking at 20 to 21 per FTE, and that's with not accepting anybody in open enrollment for special education. Hence why we're saying we can't accept anybody for open enrollment in special education based upon
Yeah, or it might make more sense too to look at the 4K through 2nd line. So the projected enrollment, the maximum capacity at 4K through 2nd is at 30. The projected enrollment is 26. If we were to reserve spaces, so my recommendation would be to reserve spaces for resident growth. Because if you look at just the capacity and the enrollment, it looks like, oh, well, we've got like 4 spaces that we could use, but then that wouldn't be allowing us any space for resident growth. If students moved in and then we had accepted kids for open enrollment, then we might be in a situation where we wouldn't have enough staff. So that's to allow for new referrals, but also people to move into the district and us be able to meet those needs when they move into the district.
So what's confusing to me, I'm following you, I think.
Okay.
But I feel like maybe we need a column that says if we have our projected enrollment and our, like there's a bunch of places where we don't have enough full-time people to even handle those 2 things added together.
Yes, so we never know how many students are going to move in from one year to the next. So like I'm trying to allow kind of a buffer so that students move in, but it's not necessarily like this is an average number of students that move in at each grade level, because we don't typically have this many new students come in each year.
Sure, right. Some here, some there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And number of spaces available seems like they should all be negative numbers, like, negative.
Yeah, I don't think I can put negative, but yes. I would say that.
I like what Kate's last sentence in the second paragraph is, though. I mean, I think this shows it, right? I mean, based upon our maximum capacity and our current enrollment, and then just like she said, allowing some buffer for new referrals or people moving into the district that need services. But that last sentence in the second paragraph, rather, current enrollment projections suggest that we do not have enough staff to meet student needs for the current 22-23 school year. Just our own students' needs at this time. It's the reality. So, and just, it probably was stated, but just so everyone understands too, it's a Wisconsin law administrative code that it's required every January for a school board to designate spaces or no spaces available for open enrollment, regular education spaces by grade, and the number of open enrollment special education spaces. So we're doing the special education, the open enrollment for regular education. We do not do at this time due to the fact we're accepting. We're accepting everyone and anyone at this point in time, even though the realities are, as Anna just alluded to, and that was, we've had to make some cuts each year for a structural deficit, but we also understand our enrollment we're accepting right now due to the fact that enrollment's imperative to help to sustain that and to build it up. But on the special education side right now, we're saying we do not have spaces available.
The bottom line is we talk a lot about wanting to attract new students to the district, but the unfortunate reality when it comes to special education is since we can't afford to hire more professionals to come in and work with kids, every child that comes in from outside of the school district tax area takes away from the educational experience of children who live in the school district.
Yeah, so our duty is to the students who live here first,
Yep.
first and foremost, of course. Yeah.
It creates difficult situations, though.
Yeah, and-
Unfortunately, it's very difficult discussions with parents.
I think one of the challenges with this is it's putting kids as if they're a number, and no kid, no student, no family, none of them are equal. Many have diverse needs, and so it's challenging to put all of that into a number, particularly in January. A lot can change from January to June, but especially to the following September. So there's a lot that goes into some of these numbers. There's not a perfect science of what a caseload number should be, because lots of, one student doesn't necessarily equal one student in terms of their needs and the services that they have or need.
I will make the motion to approve the number of spaces for open enrollment for students with disabilities as indicated in the presentation.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Okay, we're up to action planning related to district and school report cards.
Page 70 of your packet starts specifically with a middle school action plan that was originally developed in December of 2019. The board was updated March 15th of 2021, and there was an update plan for tonight. We would like to bring that back in February because Mr. Sines cannot be here today, and we'd really like him to take the lead as he did most of the work with his staff, and we'd like him to report out on that. So I will proceed with information from the district and school report cards that were presented during the December meeting. It should be noted that I can proceed with that without hearing about what had been done previously at the middle school. So what we're going to present today will support it, but it's not taking it in a totally different direction, if that makes sense.
One quick question. In the package, we have action steps to address school report card dated January 17, 2022. Is that the action we're talking about right now?
Yes, that's what I'm going to dig into. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so everyone sees that. It's after the, okay, perfect. So in December, the administrative team talked to you for a good deal of time about both the district and the specific school report cards. And per that presentation, 3 separate areas have been identified for growth opportunities within district. So this is a district-wide focus. Everything that I'm going to talk about tonight is discussion. So ideas, we are looking for feedback and such. The first growth area is literacy. This is district-wide. The percentage of students that have been demonstrating proficiency in ELA has been consistently lower than math. We saw that throughout the schools, and we're seeing a decline in the percentage of students who are scoring in advance and proficient in ELA. The second area for growth was the Etms Improvement. The state report card from 2021 provided East Troy Middle School with a score of 55.6 and a rating of meets few expectations. In the areas of achievement and growth, the middle school scored below the state average. Furthermore, while the target group outcomes indicated that students were experiencing growth, these learners are still not demonstrating proficiency of state standards, which suggests that the achievement gap is not closing. And lastly, we identified improvement needed in special education, which would be continued improvement because we are seeing it happening currently. State report cards indicate that our students with disabilities are growing academically. So their growth was happening, but their proficiency or achievement is not at the level we would like it to be. It's not sufficient to close the achievement gap. So generally speaking, students with disabilities are not demonstrating proficiency and as a result are behind grade level in both math and literacy. Those are our 3 focus areas where these steps came from or these ideas have generated from. So the first is solidifying a scope and sequence of instruction and resources for literacy for K through 5th grade. That's one of the areas. This came not only from our school report cards, but also from vertical teaming work that we have done with our teachers. So Mark and Lindsay have met with grade levels, vertical team-wise. So kindergarten and first grade, first and second, second and third, third and fourth, fourth and fifth. And what we're hearing is that educators have identified the need for a clear, thorough literacy scope and sequence, which identifies expectations regarding the specific skills addressed at each level, and more importantly, the depth of knowledge associated with those skills. So while our teachers have our standards, you'll often see standards repeat from grade level to grade level. We need to solidify how deep each grade level goes to prepare for the next. Does that make sense? I see some furrowed brows. Okay, so how we would like to do this, we have a district literacy specialist who is currently doing a lot. She delivers interventions to elementary students. She meets with teams. She organizes professional development. She does all of it. We have some long-term subs in district, and so we had the opportunity to train one of them in our interventions. We would like that long-term sub to work with intervention students that our district literacy specialist is currently working with. And that would free up time for our district literacy specialist to solidify this scope and sequence that we can then work with teachers on. So there are very clear expectations regarding the depth of knowledge that our students must get to at each grade level. Also, we need to explore some resources that would support that, so this would also allow time for that to happen. The beauty of this is that in addition to working on the scope and sequence, having someone else in that role, so a long-term sub, would allow additional students to be seen for intervention because she will have more time than our district literacy specialist would have, because some of that time our district literacy specialist would have been spending on district requirements such as professional development and literacy planning.
This is specific to 4K through 5th graders?
Correct. That's where we're starting with. We want to solidify that, and then I'll get further into where we're going with middle school. Okay. Okay. As we're talking literacy, I'd like to add an elementary reading teacher interventionist for next year. So we're talking about beginning in fall of 2022. So this will impact both the elementary and secondary literacy program. The new hire would allow the current district literacy specialist to focus on the secondary level. So currently, our district literacy specialist is stationed at Little Prairie and delivers interventions there. We would like to put someone else in that office to deliver interventions, move the district literacy specialist stationed at the middle school to model and co-teach ELA lessons and assist other content area teachers as they work to incorporate disciplinary literacy practices into teaching and learning. This This would also include, so we're not taking away our district literacy specialists from focusing on elementary at all. There would still be time to do that, but the bulk of the attention would be at the secondary level. Okay. Currently, there's a co-teaching model for ELA at the middle school. It was started in 2018-2019. And it was co-teaching in the creation of an ELA block. So what that did is it allowed instruction to combine reading, writing, grammar, and vocabulary, skills that were typically addressed through 2 different classes. So in addition to increasing that ELA class time and adopting the workshop model, which is best practice, we do it throughout the district, teachers were paired up to deliver instruction to larger groups of students. Since that time, we have seen some improvement. However, not all grade levels and cohorts are experiencing the same level of growth and progress. I think another challenge with that has been the change in staff. So when you have a co-teaching relationship, it's built on trust and rapport, and there's been very good relationships. But with the fact that we're losing staff, then those relationships start over. And it's most successful when 2 educators have that established relationship, but we're seeing that we can't always maintain that. So we're discussing, does it make better sense then to move away from the co-teaching model and back to a situation where ELA would no longer be co-taught, but teachers would be assigned individual classrooms and class rosters. It would maintain the workshop model of instruction because that's best practice for literacy instruction, and that's been implemented at the elementary level. So that would be maintained. It would just be in single classrooms rather than shared classrooms. Okay. I'd like to provide a dedicated middle school math interventionist. So we currently have one, but remember, that individual was not able to deliver any interventions during the first trimester because we were short math teachers and needed to put the interventionist into a classroom. We were not able to fulfill that role until after the first trimester. So our interventionist has now started to deliver math intervention, but we missed an entire trimester of that because we couldn't fill an open teaching position. So we're looking to maintain a dedicated middle school math intervention. Prior to having that, we hoped and prayed that the middle school would qualify for Title I. So Title I is a grant that is essentially based on numbers of free and reduced students. Sometimes the middle school qualifies and sometimes they don't. When they do qualify, they get to share an interventionist who also serves 2 other buildings. So 3 buildings altogether can really not see that very many kids. So we see the need for maintaining the math interventionist, but we really like a math interventionist and not a person that gets to pop into classrooms and fill those roles, but rather can dedicate their time to intervention for students who have deficits in the area of math.
Is 1 enough?
Well, that's a good question, Anna. I mean, we'd like to have more than 1, but
I'm just wondering what the actual need is. If we know a student load and, the actual need
Yeah, so
is
right now we're
3, but
picking and choosing. I can tell you that. So what we do is we look at student data, and this is the same thing we have to do for Title I. We look at student data and we identify those students who are called targeted, so they're most in need, so they have the largest achievement gap. Do we sit around the table sometimes and say, wow, we have other kids that we just can't fit into the intervention schedule, but they need to have some assistance in that area? Yes.
So could we really use 2 or 3? What would
2 would be fantastic. But we take 1.
Well, and we take 1 because we stated
Because we're maintaining.
when we're looking at the third column, which is associated costs, let's be
Yes.
blunt, because they're not all impact needs. They're not. But they are to a certain degree because as like the provided dedicated middle school math interventions, we have it. Unfortunately, we had to dedicate the individual to a different area for a trimester this year, not due to anybody's not due to our concerns, but not being able to find a math teacher at the time. But that's currently in the budget. So it's kind of, as Amy said, it's picking and choosing, and I couldn't agree more on the need. I mean, yeah, we could have this list go a lot larger. The balancing act is, and as you guys already kind of know, but in closed session, we'll be going into a heavy component of various options for consideration on how we're gonna address the upcoming structural deficit of $1 million.
I understand, but I don't want to not talk about the problems just because we know we can't pay for them.
No, I agree.
Yep.
We have to talk about
No,
them.
I agree. And this isn't this is, absolutely, and this is not an action item tonight.
Right.
So it's kind of, what we're trying to do is present, absolutely, and I could not agree more. We're trying to present a little bit of what we think can go into the action plan. I love it that you're saying, but do we need more? And that might be something we all have to discuss. And then in closed session, discussing kind of that budgetary
Right.
component with it and saying, okay, so of these, which ones are even able to be done once you handle the structural deficit? So all I'm trying to let the people know that are watching is what Amy's on right now, it's not an additional cost, it's in our budget. But you can look at that twofold, because we still have to maintain the budget then, and we're having to decide how we're even gonna balance the budget next year with $1 million deficit.
Yeah.
I'm kind of from the old school. Me and my wife, we had 3 children, and my wife read to those kids every night. I mean, the parents are also responsible for these things as well. Do we have anything going on that would encourage the parents to participate in reading to their children, providing books to their children, letting them know that reading to them is important and part of the education of their child?
So because
I don't want the district to do all the parenting work when we have parents that will do the parenting work and participate in raising their children. Like my wife read to our children, I read to our children too, and there was no literacy problems. I'm not saying that there's not situations where you could do that and there still be problems. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that this is also participate for the parents to participate in their children's education. That's what
So
I'm
we
saying.
offer what's called family engagement in the area of literacy and math. We have, because we are a title targeted school, we provide lots of resources for our families and information related to math and literacy. Examples of that would include data nights, where parents come and learn what the data means, and how to use the strategies that we use at school to support their students at home. We send resources home. We have summer reading programs. We have the summer school programs that help both our students that have deficits in the area, but also are looking for extensions. So we are certainly hitting on that. When we sit around the table and talk about student needs, a lot of that, I mean, Dale, it's not uncommon to hear that come up, but we continually go back to we can control what we can control, and we have to set up the best possible learning environment to support the student needs. And unfortunately, we have students that have deficits in literacy and math, and so as a school district, we have to come up with ways and resources to support them to close that achievement gap.
How are we engaging with the parents right now on the literacy? How does
So
it
like
do-
I said, we have websites that have,
Do we send out personal letters? Do we
send out letters. We have the website that has strategies that they can use at home. We send Reading Comes Alive Week is coming up. We send lots of information about that and activities you can do at home to support literacy. Like I said, we promote the summer school reading. We had kids coming onto the grounds last year to celebrate the things they did at home in the area of literacy. The Ready, Set, Go conference have been established to talk with parents about, hey, this is where your kiddo is, here's where we're going. All of that is in motion.
Not
Yep,
just
stay in
focusing
play,
on
stay in
literacy,
play.
so stay in play.
Yep.
Which is a focus on like birth to four, to get parents involved and engaged early on, and to assist them and support them, not to draw bad judgments or conclusions, to support people going, what can we do to help you, and if they have any concerns in regards to any factors, and then having that available to them weekly to do the stay in play, so they already are starting to develop those relationships with the school district. So
Yep.
Even beyond stay and play, we've had staff involved with other community agencies like the library and some of the groups and things that are offered through some of those other agencies too, that staff have partnered with them.
And our current interventionists and classroom teachers are consistently working to support families with how to support literacy and math literacy at home.
So do you guys ever like get together and brainstorm how to get the parents more engaged in this? I mean, is there
All the time. We have family engagement meetings. So we talk about how do we.
If there's a student that's falling behind, do you contact those parents and say, hey, look, we want to help your student. This is what we can do to help him.
So
or
any
her.
student that is identified as in need of intervention, yes, parents are contacted. Yep.
Okay. Just asking.
Yep. Nope. Yep. I'm just pausing in case there are any other questions.
Do we still have, I guess, I don't know, is there like a parent-teacher organization anymore?
Yep.
There
At the
is?
elementary level, yes.
It is,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
And their fundraiser this year, the money that they made was to buy books for all of the students.
Right.
So they're focused on literacy this year.
Yep.
I can't tell you how important it is that they're read to, that a child's read to from young age. It's just extremely important.
So while we're talking literacy,
yeah, because just really quick, sorry. Yeah, I mean, because the big comment, Dale, that research is always promoted and shared. I mean, forever, ever since I even was back in teaching, back in my middle school years in the 90s, and I mean, it was known then, so it's even much more known now, and that is obviously up to, I believe, third grade is the most essential grade, they've said, from an age level, right? And you're learning to read. But then after that, it's about reading to learn, right? And if you have not, I mean, that is proven through the research. If you are not at that grade level by third grade of learning to read, the difficulties and the gap become that much more exponentially difficult to close. It's been proven absolutely by research. Actually, there's a lot of research already showing that by third grade, they can almost predict what's occurring by the 12th grade year in graduation. I mean, there's that much research on it. Third grade's an immense time to be knowing where your child is at, but you can't make it just happen when they get into third grade.
the next component is ensuring that we provide a dedicated middle school reading interventionist. That is also currently in the budget. It's along to the tune of qualifying for title as well. If middle school qualifies, then we have someone there. We want to ensure that someone's going to be there consistently. We did have an ELA coach position, but because of staffing, that coach has been put into the ELA classroom. So we would like to maintain that coach position, but turn it into an interventionist rather than solely a coach. CPM is our math curriculum that we have both at the middle school and the high school. However, within the last 3 years at the middle school, the math department has completely turned over, more than once for some of those positions. As a result, the current staff has minimal training in CPM curriculum. It should be noted also that due to COVID, all of the training that has happened virtually, where our original group that went through that training was able to do it in person. So we would like to dedicate some time and effort to the CPM training so our current staff has everything that they need to be comfortable and effective and secure in what they're doing. That is currently in the budget. I do have that in my budget, so it is not an additional cost. The next step is collaborating with the CPM coach. So CPM offers contracted services that allows a coach to come into our classrooms to observe the teachers in the craft that they are trained in, and then to meet with teachers to develop goals, to provide feedback specifically as it relates to CPM. That is an additional cost. You will notice I don't have the cost there yet. I'm still waiting on the quote from CPM because I had to go through a couple different channels to get to that. So we are looking to bring coaches in to visit the classrooms, to observe the lessons, to provide the meaningful feedback. The beauty of that is you're bringing CPM experts in, and they're working specifically with our teachers to develop goals, to measure those goals, to measure student success, and then change the goals and such throughout the school year. So we were looking to start that next school year. It would allow a coach to come in August and meet with them monthly through the entire school year. This is a good follow-up to Kate's chart on special education spaces and the interesting look that in some areas we could be over the caseloads that are required or are, as a general guideline, our best practice, even with just our own students. So to address that, we're looking to add 2 additional special education teachers. As reported on the state report cards, 20 to 50% of the building target groups, now remember those target groups are our students that are scoring in the bottom quartile. 20 to 50% of our building target groups have been identified as special education students. Currently, our special education teachers are carrying caseloads that range between 10 and 17 students, and you saw what it would look like for next year. General guidelines suggest that caseload should not be greater than 15 students. While the threshold for caseload numbers can vary depending on the needs of students, some of our special education teachers are serving greater numbers than ever suggested. So these caseloads are driving the amount of services that can be provided efficiently, and the greater the number of students, the less able the teachers are to co-plan and co-serve with regular education teachers. While adding 4 additional teachers would be more impactful, by adding 2, caseload numbers can be further reduced, allowing more time to plan, deliver specialized instruction, co-serve, and provide guidance to support students in the regular education classroom at the middle and high school levels in particular, where our caseloads are currently ranging from 15 to 17.
That's a really big one. I'm not trying to sway to saying, hey, do that one or anything else. I just want to note, right, like if people are going to hold the state report card as one of the large accountabilities, I think there's other things that are just as important, but if that's going to be held as a large accountability aspect, the target group must be addressed. I mean, that has clearly been evident in what we presented last month when we presented the data. And let's not get it wrong. I think some people say target group's not doing enough. Target group, the bottom 25th% in the bottom quartile, they are growing. And I'm not saying the whole target group special ed, as Kate and Amy are pointing out here, 20 to 50% of the building target group is special education. All right, so let's not say the target group is special education. That's not accurate. Yep. But I think it's really important too that people understand they're making growth. On the target group, it says target group versus non-target group. And you'll see in a lot of our graphs that we presented last month at each building, most target groups versus non-target groups are making as much growth, if not more growth. Mm-hmm. The problem is the achievement is so far behind that we have to make exponentially so much more growth with the target group students that are identified. And that's what we have to begin doing. Our point is we're trying to provide resources and staffing. That's why a lot of the interventionists are being promoted. We're trying to provide a lot of extra assistance and support for target group. If we don't improve the target group, people cannot expect the state report card to change significantly. Just saying. It's a reality. Like, you're asking us to change the report card, but don't provide resources to the target group. Well, the target group is what is going to change that report card, or not change the report card.
The next component has to do with contracted days. And I just want to kind of set the stage for that. So you approved the calendar last time, and that identifies in-service days. Since COVID started, but we've seen the impact of it, we have moved several of our in-service days to the beginning of the year to allow our staff to facilitate Ready, Set, Go conferences. That invites students and their families into the building. It provides baseline data. Assessments are administered to provide baseline data, so our teachers have information to inform instruction starting at the kickoff of the school year. Research and educator feedback suggests that during the school year, the most effective use for professional learning days, so those in-service days, is to provide time for educators to review and analyze current student data, use the information to inform instruction and plan meaningful lessons, and collaborate with their colleagues to do so. Knowing that, in-service days for the 22-23 school year were scheduled to align with our established assessment windows and the end of trimester, which would allow our staff to dig into the data. Now, prior to COVID, we used to host data retreats where teachers would come in, we'd have the data, we'd dig into the data, we'd identify kids for intervention. That was all possible because we had subs that could go cover the classrooms for the data retreats. We no longer have that. So we have to figure out a way that we can still work on that data, because that's what's powerful. That's what's informing the instruction for the next day and identifying where students are strong and what progress they've made and where they still need help. So we're dedicating the in-service days for that purpose starting in 22-23. Now the issue is there's still professional learning that has to take place. So for example, when new curriculum is adopted, our teachers have to be trained in it. We are continuing to grow our practices and skills in the area of assessment and instructional practices. That all takes time, but we don't have time for it when we're in session, right? Our teachers are thinking about our kids and their lessons and what's next. So a way that we think we could address that is increasing our contracted days and in turn the salary schedule. So by adding 5 additional days for professional learning and curriculum work, we would have to add to the salary schedule. Those 5 days would happen during the summer. So it would happen at the end of the school year. When students are not here, teachers would come in to complete that professional learning and their curriculum work so that they're ready to go and focus on students when the next school year starts. Does that make sense? Any questions on that one? Okay, and in the yes, Anna, do you have a question?
I'm not sure how to ask it yet, so.
Okay. All right. Sure.
And one of the rationales, not to go into great depth on that, it's more on the needs that I want us to focus on, which Amy did a great job talking about the need and the rationalization of it. So I don't really want to focus too much on the other components of contracted days or salary schedule, but just so people are aware twofold. A, the salary schedule, right? Obviously, I've been putting together, I plan on doing more of it in February, but with the help of Amanda Smith, we've been looking, and obviously Kirsten and Kathy and everything else, we've been looking at our historic staffing too. So we've kind of been looking at it from a standpoint of, from like 17, 18, I mean, somewhere you gotta draw a line. How much staffing turnover have we had since 17, 18, right?
Yep.
And where has the staffing turnover happened primarily? Certain buildings, certain departments, right? So we've been trying to segregate, break that down. And then we've been looking at it, okay, so what's the reason? Retirements? Is it other factors? Has it been non-renewals, to be honest? Non-renewals due to budgetary reasons, which an employee has no is we looked at it from a standpoint, what are contracted days of other districts? Because other districts, I have noticed, have more contracted days. Not all, but a lot, around, relatively speaking, and in our conference. But they also have better salary schedules. So they're, you know, they might, so they're competing with us, they have better salary schedules, but they also maybe have more contracted days. So it's a way for us to say, we have a need, but the need is we need more time with our staff too. But we also want to justify not just twofold, looking at our staff saying, just give us more of your time. Give us more of your time and, you know, come on, you got into this for the good of the heart and nothing else. No, but we also, you know, we were at the top of the salary schedule, we'd be saying, give us more time, and we already are at the top. But we're not. We're not there, and that's the other thing. So we notice calendar days, we can increase, not unusual to other districts, but we also feel it's a way then of justifying the salary schedule, because we are increasing days too. So there's a balance of twofold there of trying to do, but it's all still based upon the need first. The need is not, let's increase the salary schedule. The need is these things that Amy pointed out, with the emphasis of, we're asking them to do more, and we already know we're losing staff to salary on the baseline and on the high end. And we even have some of that data. I mean,
Yeah.
I presented this a while ago, but don't forget, this isn't even last year's, or this year's data.
I have 2021 data, Chris, if you need it.
I have the 2021 too,
Okay.
so that's a
Yep.
bummer. That is a real bummer, because I really wish I would have been heard that, because I think the staff would have appreciated that. But we have data from the 2021 school years, right, that shows like high salary to high to low, right? That we went from, at one point in time in 12-13, we were the 93rd school district that were highest salary out of 445 of them. And we've gone to 142nd now. Now, some people might say, well, it's still a 444 of them, or 445. It's still fairly good. I'm not saying that's not. But I'm saying we've gone that way. Like in benefits, we went from at one time 43rd, and now we're at 204 out of the district. So the point is that, you know, on low salary, we're 350th out of 444. So one being the best, right, on the highest and low salary, we're 350th on our baseline salary out of 444 districts. So that tells you, obviously, we don't have a really strong baseline salary. Now, granted, we can put people where we believe we can afford and they deserve, but if we were to always say, just give them the baseline, we're 350th. When somebody sees where our baseline is, there's 349 other districts with a better baseline than we have. Those are the type of things, so we're just saying, like, we want to try to get more competitive in some of those areas. And when it comes to calendar days, there are districts around us that are at 190, 187, 191, 190. We're 183. So what we're saying is we have a need to increase those days based upon everything Amy went through. And we'd like to increase them by 5 days to get us up to the 188, which is in the ballpark of many Rock Valley Conference schools and our surrounding, and relatively surrounding districts that might even have a few more days. But we also believe it's imperative, because of what we see on the salary and what is going on from a competitive standpoint, and losing some people in those areas, that it could justify that. Now, there's, as she has in there, there's a cost associated to that, right? To even do 5 days. Kathy, on those 5 days, to justify that amount that it would even cost, was that just, how did you calculate that component?
You're asking me to remember something from weeks ago.
Mark has no sympathy for you since I did that to him.
I believe it was just the teachers and taking the current costing. Yes, that's what it was, because I just finished the 12/31 snapshot for CPI. So it was just taking that group of teachers, dividing by how many days there are now, and adding an extra 5 days and costing out the additional Wisconsin retirement system and the additional FICA on top of that.
Sorry for the long explanation. I just want people to, I want them to recognize where it comes from and what it's supporting. And we're really trying to solve a lot in that one, a lot. because that's not just a need of students. That's trying to solve some of the hiring and retaining issue too.
So the conversation about the salary schedule leads into the professional learning. Today, we had an in-service day, and our entire staff was able to participate in recorded sessions from the Stagger Conference, which took the very best researchers, consultants, gurus in the area of assessment, and our staff got to see a variety of sessions from that conference and have meaningful discussions at their building about what that means for the practices and the policies we have in place. Assessment is a key part of instruction because it should drive instruction. It gives us the information we need to make decisions to serve students, and continually improving those practices really only benefits our students in the long run. So that's something we were able to do today. Another area we see as a need is continuous improvement process, a framework for that at each building. That requires some training, some consultants in that area to transform teaching and learning. That reinforces our district goals and policies, so we're not looking at adopting anything new. We're looking at how to go through a goal-setting process with our current data that identifies the needs and ensures that students are receiving what they need. So it shifts learning from a deficit model to a proactive solution. And that would be part of this professional learning. How do we get our staff trained in that? Also, we need some training in, we talked about that co-serve model where we have special education teachers that work with regular education teachers to serve students with disabilities. We need some continuous work in that area because, as you know, we've had turnover in the area of special education. We need to continually train those individuals. The same is true with regular education. So being a product of a regular education program for preparation, we didn't learn how to meet the needs of every special education student in our classroom. So we need our experts in special education to assist with that. It's also students who are maybe not at grade level. So how do we provide a tier 2 intervention in class? Tier 1 is what everybody receives, but we know not everybody's at the same level. So how do we deliver instruction in class that also addresses tier 2 intervention? Tier 3 are those interventionists that pull kids out to fill in the gaps for foundational. So those are examples of the PD that we are interested in. A caveat to this conversation is our learning loss, right? So we have ESSER dollars for learning loss. We feel strongly that each of these 10 components is designed to address learning loss. So that would be the conversation that would have to be had. And budget. So this was just no action today, but we just wanted to present the work that we have done thus far. So if there are any lingering questions, I know that we will be talking about this further as we dig into budget and what that means moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction was just we have an acute concern, right? How dire it is varies by person, right? How much emphasis to put on some of this stuff, I think, varies by person. And I agree with you, Dale, and I spoke last time about the parents' responsibility, right? I mean, I imagine my mother would have been hiring a math tutor if I was struggling with math. And, you know, not everybody can do that too. So where the line is of what the school is to provide and how we can fund it and provide it and what needs to happen at home, it's certainly collaborative. As I was reading through this, I was trying to sort of keep a mental tally of what are we suggesting for our current classroom staff to take a training on or do a workshop in, or, try to figure out more stuff versus where are we saying, like, this is bleeding over here and we need to put, you know, we need surgery on this wound versus physical therapy once you're out of this acute problem. It's a bad analogy, but I guess I just want to explore that further because it's interesting to hear the tier 1 and 2 and 3 kind of breakdown and think about how are we really able to address that stuff. You know, our teachers want to always be perfecting the way they're delivering their lessons and the way they're addressing each child's way of processing the information and all of that, right? They're already doing a lot of personalized learning. So how much more can we ask of them in new techniques and new training, and we're going back to rehash this thing versus where we want to put some extra help, whether that's another person in the room or, right? So I see all of that in here, and it's, I think, probably all very important, and just trying to figure out where to set the dial of investing in some or both.
Sure.
Or again, I don't really have a question as much as just curious to continue the conversation, because training on new things, trying to figure out how to implement them in your classroom and within the lessons that you're already giving, all that stuff takes a lot of time.
It sure does.
And we're like bleeding out
Yep.
in some ways now, right? So I guess that's where really where I'm just trying to say,
well,
how many interventionists do we could we actually really use, right?
I hear what you're saying, which is why we have identified a need for staff. And like Chris said, as he presents information eventually in February about staff, I think that's going to really shed some additional light on what we're seeing about staff leaving and which areas and whatnot. But what I would say is if we're looking at the data and those school report cards, we can recognize that there's an issue with the achievement gap. Our students are growing. Like, we've seen that. We've said it repeatedly. They're growing, but they're not hitting the grade level standards, which is an achievement gap. The only way to do that is to plug the holes through intervention. So we do know that there is a real need for intervention. And yes, we will have to continue to talk about it, but I just wanted to respond to that in that way. The other thing I wanted to say about staff is we're not looking to do anything new. We know they are working so hard in their classrooms every day. We acknowledge that. We just want to give them additional supports for that and time to work on their curriculum as well. And it's so hard to do that during the school year when their efforts, they're like, look, I'm focused on the kids in my classroom and that has to be my priority, and we get that. So that's where the whole idea with the salary schedule time came to.
Any other questions? Good. Overnight field trip requests.
All right, so the first one that you have is from Tim Hummel. This is for jazz band. You got that one in front of you?
Do we have that? I don't remember reading it, but I might be crazy.
Rogers Travel. That was the one that was added later, right? That's the choir Nashville one, is that right or not?
No, this one is to Eau Claire.
No, I'm saying the Bob's Rogers Travel is the one in Nashville choir.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Yeah, I do not see the one for Eau Claire, Ken, so if you could go through it.
Sure. Yeah, and I can get you copies of it. I can run back and grab those. This is for April 20th of this coming year. So this is UW Eau Claire. This is jazz band with Mr. Hummel, taking about 22 students. In it right now, they don't have the exact itinerary done, so we actually have the last time they ran it, which was in 2019, so we have that itinerary right now. Basically what it is it's at UW Eau Claire, and they'll be doing some master classes and so some trainings and things like that for them, and then also performing. So it's just a lot of like high-level classes. Who the instructors are, I don't know for this year. We don't have those, but they'll be going up there just for the weekend. So, and he's got everything on there, which I'll get you, and has like the code of conduct and everything else. So this one's, you know, close by, short period of time, pretty straightforward one. All right. Now the next one.
Kent, you need approval of that one tonight?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I can get you the copies. We'll make copies.
Okay, so you have seen this proposal for the choir to go down to Nashville. I think we brought it in this summer or early fall. So we didn't have a crystal ball. We really didn't think that COVID would rise at the time when we brought this. Amy Swanson has been working with Bob Rogers Travel to talk about some contingency or insurance plan. So I'd like to start with the case response plan first. Do you have that in your packet? Okay, so start with the case response plan. So what this is talking about is included within the Bob Rogers Travel Company. If a student becomes symptomatic, it goes through that they would go get a COVID-19 test, you know, how they would handle that they would have a separate room, you know, that the meals will be covered for the length of the tour. But it does say if a positive test result comes back and the student cannot travel home, that the additional cost would be for the student and their family. The lodging and food expense, and as well as, like, we can't just leave the kid there, so there's a chaperone cost too, right? Because the chaperone would have to be there. Now, not included in this plan would be they're in Nashville, 9 hours away. So if a parent would go down, of course, at any point, a parent can go down, pick up their child, and bring them back. So they don't have to stay there. But what happens if, you know, the parent can't get them or something? So there has to be a plan for if they must stay in Nashville. So right now, there are protocols in place, but it's at the expense of the family once the trip is up. So then if you could go to the isolation protection plan page. Students could purchase insurance. At least approximately 60% of students did purchase insurance. So with that insurance comes the possibility for this isolation protection program. Notice what it would include there, those first bullets: food and lodging until they are able to return home. So those extra, let's say it's 7 extra days, arbitrary number, then the insurance would pay for the hotel room and the food for those 7 extra days. Any fare difference, so let's say, the bus is leaving, they go down on a coach bus, the bus is leaving to come home when it's scheduled to. How's that kid going to get home if the parents don't go down? So, you know, the insurance plan would cover a flight if they're able to fly, or a bus, a Greyhound, something, you know, some plan to get them home. And then they would cover the cost of the chaperone to stay with that student as long as they needed to. Here are the caveats. In order for this isolation protection plan to be implemented, every student or every person in the group, chaperone and students that are going, must present a negative COVID-19 PCR test prior to leaving. So they pull out Friday, Wednesday. Thankfully our district does that. Wednesday, the nurse's assistant would come over, swab everybody, you know, would test negative. I did ask if they test positive, what happens? They get a full refund if they test positive before they go. Okay. So if everybody agrees to the testing, then the protection plan can go in place. But in order for it to cover each individual person, you have to look down at the additionally, for individuals to be covered under this program, they must hold the travel insurance, which we talked about, and hold proof of being fully vaccinated against COVID-19 prior to the departure. So for everyone to qualify, everyone must test. If you want it to cover you, you have to A, have the insurance plan, and B, have the vaccination. So it is our recommendation that we have everyone be tested, that we follow this plan, and then it would be up to the families if they wanted to purchase the insurance and accept the vaccination status for their child to be covered by that.
So Stacy, if everyone in the group is tested prior to they leave, and let's say everyone was negative or positive, the positives obviously would go fully refunded. But all the negative students and chaperones could go, as long as the chaperones are negative too. And then it would be up to every single individual, from a standpoint of having purchased the insurance, but to have purchased it, to be eligible to purchase it, they would have to be fully vaccinated. Is that what you're telling me?
To be not eligible to purchase it, you can purchase the insurance without being fully vaccinated, but for it to cover the top 3 bullets there, the food and lodging, fare difference, and the cost of the one group parent or one adult to remain, to have those 3 benefits of the insurance, yes, you have to be fully vaccinated.
So if they attend but they're not fully vaccinated, they test negative when they leave, but then down there obviously demonstrate symptoms or test positive, whatever, they would not qualify for the food and lodging fare difference, and covering the cost of the one adult per pupil.
You said that currently 60% of the kids are under the travel insurance program?
Yes, and then also covers other things outside of COVID. I mean, it's travel insurance, so if they can't go because of a funeral or something like that, it would cover that too. But for the purposes of COVID, they would have to be fully vaccinated in order to follow the isolation protection plan.
Do they still have the ability to purchase that at this point in time, or has that deadline ceased?
They have the ability to purchase the insurance that would allow them to have the isolation protection plan cover them. There's a higher level insurance, and that ship has sailed. They can't purchase the insurance that says if they cancel the trip, they get fully refunded at this time. They've passed that deadline.
And you don't have to have one to have the other. So can somebody purchase the isolation protection program if they've not purchased the larger policy? That's what I think I'm hearing you say.
Yes, like a lower level insurance. There was like 2 levels.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
And so are you asking if they got approved those days? I guess I'd kind of want to know, and I apologize, maybe I should have known this because we have kind of gone over this, but that's why we said we need to bring it to the board, because they'd approved it at one time, but things have changed.
Correct.
And that is, if it were to be approved tonight, students that attended, especially students that attended that are negative when they leave, because the whole group would have to be negative, or I mean, everybody would have to be tested, and then those that are negative could go. But those that are not fully vaccinated, if they became positive while down there, I would want the board to clearly understand what that means for those students, and how we're going to address that with those parents, because parents are going to have to be very then responsible for their child while they're in Nashville.
Well, I think what you said, Dr. Hebner, is key, because if it's 2 steps. So if we are saying we are not going to require students to get a PCR test, if the board is against that, I mean, that's step 1. Then what that means is that we cannot, as a school district, it's not an individual based test. So then no students can be covered by the isolation protection plan, which means if anybody tests positive down there, it is on families to figure that out. So it's, I guess what I'm asking, to be very specific, is can the high school require students that are going on the Nashville trip to have a PCR test prior to leaving? And the reason that Dr. Hebner suggested we bring this back is that was not part of the initial overnight field trip proposal. That's an addition, but there are strong ties for the group that would be impacted if students refuse to take the PCR test.
Has this been circulated amongst them in terms of 60% have already bought the insurance?
So we have a meeting scheduled for the 20th, is that Thursday, at 7 o'clock. That based upon, I mean, they are aware of these options, but based upon what happens tonight, we will go over what that means with the
How
group.
many students is this?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's 20-ish.
Have we gotten any sense from the group what their overall reaction is to? I mean, a PCR test is not an uncomfortable experience like it was a year ago.
I asked the instructor that, right? Like, what are we signing up for here? And they seem to think that it would be reasonable, that that wouldn't be a deal breaker for kids and families. And almost to the opposite, because if we don't have PCR tests, then no families can be covered, even if they have purchased the insurance, and be part of this isolation plan. Can I have do I need a vote? What's next?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're looking for approval on both field trips. Yeah.
Okay.
Even though I've not approved, this is a different proposal, so I would act as if they're, up to this point in time, this proposal has not been approved. And so there's no national trip for that.
I'll make a motion to approve both overnight field trip requests. Now we can talk about it.
I'll second that.
Great. Any other discussion?
Good.
Tell the
Great.
band to bring home a tuba again this year.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Upcoming expiring board term and vacancy for discussion and action.
Yeah, so per our policy 132, we're going to need to file when there's a current term and a vacancy due to the fact of an individual not being able to complete their term. And at this point in time, Bob has informed me that his effective date for the board, effective last date for the Board of Education will be the 28th of February, 2022, due to the fact he will need to resign from the Board of Education from the East Troy Community School District. I know that he has shared with me that he would love not to be able to do that due to the fact he's had many, obviously, I would say challenging opportunities, but he has enjoyed the time and everything, but he will not be able to meet the requirements any longer to be a board member of the East Troy Community School District. So he's informed me that, again, on the 28th of February 2022, that'd be his effective last date. So first, before I even get to the what next then from the policy perspective, which, as you know, we have a policy, like I said, 132, which we actually completed a few years ago due to the fact we needed to get that more outlined. I just want to say to Bob, and I know he's got another month here to serve, but thank you so much for your time and your efforts, your insight. Insight, I know, at board meetings, and insight, I will say, to me as a leader, when we've had good informal and formal conversations. You've brought a lot of clarity, I think, to the board, to fellow board members, to the community, to our administration team, to our staff, and I can personally speak for myself as a leader. So I really appreciate the feedback and insights that you have provided and the assistance and support. And I've always appreciated your focus on trying to provide a quality education for each and every student. And I think you would say, be the first one to admit, it's been quite the challenge getting on as the board. Like, wow, you've always said that. Like, you learn a lot when you're on as a board member from what you anticipated to what the realities are sometimes. So I don't know if you have anything to share, Bob, but I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. I think we're all a lot smarter the day we join the board than when we leave, because we realize how little we know and how much we think we know, how many things we're just not prepared to deal with until we go through discussions. But no, it's been a pleasure, and I wish the timing were a little different, but on to new things.
So with that, the board may be wondering, like, all right, Chris, so what is next? What do we do? Well, since Bob's now made it public notice and he's given us a date of his effective last date, the board has some options, but The biggest one would be we need to notify the paper of the opening and fulfilling of the vacancy from the 28th of February until Bob's last term date, which would be this coming up election date. So it would really run up until the second board meeting in April that we had. I don't know, top of my head, I apologize, but 26th or something off the top of my head. So that individual, we're talking about a 2-month span that we'd be looking for somebody to fill that position. So we will make that publicly noticed beginning tomorrow. We'll immediately get that out. And then per our board policy, just so everybody's clearly understanding, any interested candidate can notify the board. What I would say is, instead of reaching out to each board member, if you want to reach out to each board member and say you're interested, great. But to notify Ms. Terry Karstens, the administrative assistant at the district office, that you would like to do a declaration of candidacy to fulfill the open vacancy. And for basically the 2 months is what you would be doing. And any board member can reach out to any individual, as per our policy and per the law, can reach out to any individual and ask them if they would be of interest in wanting to fill the vacancy. And so if they are, if you know of somebody and you're interested and you reach out to them and they're interested, have them contact, again, Terry Karstens, and she can, and tell them that they're interested in doing the non-declaration of, interested in doing the declaration of candidacy, not declaration of candidacy, for the open vacancy, not for obviously any board position, permanent 3-year term, but just for the board vacancy. What will occur then is, and this is what my recommendation is to you guys as the board, if you elect to agree to this, as it's a discussion action item, and that is, I would state at the next board meeting, my recommendation is you is, then at the next board meeting, we invite those candidates who have filled out the necessary paperwork, and we'll put a date to it, maybe like Friday, whatever, the week before, not even the date, Friday, like Friday, February 4th or something like that. We would make that a date, and then we'd say everybody who's applied, we would inform they have a right to come to the board meeting if they'd want on the 14th of February, and they can give a minute, 2-minute speech to the board of why they would like to be considered for the vacancy. And then at that night, we'd follow our protocol, and that is the board would follow the necessary protocol that we have in our policy, and that is picking an individual to fill a vacancy for the, just the remaining 2 months. So that is my recommendation to you, is if you like that, is it follows our policy, but I would state that we ask them to fill out declaration of candidacy paperwork. We'll put a date to it, like something of Friday, February 4th. I'll figure that out after this night, but we put a date to it ending. Then I notify all of you of, here's the candidates that have applied that are interested. They've all been invited to come to the meeting. If they elect, they might not want to. Maybe they want to submit something to all of you. And then at that meeting that night, we'll have it as an agenda item, and that is to select a candidate to fill the vacancy, and we'll follow our necessary protocols for that. The other thing I would suggest be considered, and this is just me being transparent, and so people understand what, and again, this is up to you. My recommendation tonight would be that the board would not entertain any of the 5 candidates that are seeking to run for the 3-year term. That's just my opinion, but that way the board does not look as if they are slanting or in favor of any of the individuals. I think we should stay out of that world. And so I don't believe that we should be looking at supporting one of the 5 individuals for this vacancy at this time. That's my personal opinion. It's just a recommendation. And that way those 5 would know after tonight of whether or not you would seriously be considering them or not. My recommendation is I would prefer not to get into that world. That's just a recommendation. I think it's in their best interest and your best interest. The other thing is, I think that the board should highly consider tonight making a statement, and again, it's up to you, but we are in a strong time frame of budget discussions. As you know, we're going into executive session tonight. We'll probably be going into executive session in February, if not having open discussion already in February. And if it goes beyond February, we'll be having open dialogue in the March board meeting with action at the latest, being taken in the first board meeting in April, as we do every time before any transitions happen, due to the fact of the complexities and the history and everything else that's been shared. So we like to try to have that resolved before any new transitions occur, and not having any new board member have to deal with that overall complexities in their first board meeting. That being said, I think rightly so, I think a strong emphasis should be put on anybody of a past board member being interested, and anybody can show an interest by all means. But I think due to the fact any past board member who already knows maybe the timelines, procedures, processes, and historical, I think should be given a strong encouragement to apply of interest. So again, I speak to anybody, but of any past board members, I would say strongly think about applying, doing a declaration of candidacy for the vacancy, due to the fact you're talking about a 2-month window, and there's a lot that could occur in these 2 months. So I think it makes, and I'll be blunt, it makes your world and my world a lot easier from the standpoint of not having to get maybe as much up to speed if it were to be somebody who already has the background knowledge. But again, those are just suggestions by me. You guys can have your dialogue and discussion over how you'd like to proceed with it.
Do we need to then, is the action to accept Bob's resignation, or is there other action intended here?
I think both. You're approving of Bob's letter of resignation from the board, and you would be approving of moving forward with posting of the vacancy. And if you're all right, I want to remind you putting into a motion that the entertaining of replacing the vacancy at the February 14th board meeting.
And if we don't get anybody, we're just going to run with 4, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Steve, you have every right to, if you get 100, not to select anybody, right? If you don't get anybody, to run with 4. So just because you even have an individual or individuals who are interested does not require the board to have to select one.
All right.
You want to make a motion?
Make a motion to regretfully accept Bob's resignation from the school board. It's been a pleasure, Bob. We don't agree on a lot of things, but that's the dialogue you need on a school board. Truly, it is. And I respect you, so.
Is there anything else, Steve, before you?
On the candidacy?
You want to put it all in?
No, Kathy can do that for me.
I've approved the acceptance of the vacancy regretfully. And then do you want to add, approve the posting of the open position and the goal to select a person at the February board meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And Dale, you're going to second?
I'll second that, yes.
Great. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Moving right along. Approval of new policy 121, records retention. We've seen this. This is the third reading? Are we on the third reading, right? That's why we can approve it?
Make a motion to approve policy 121.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Great. WIAA Conference Realignment Task Force Committee update. This is informational. There were a couple of letters in our packet.
Yeah, so, the letters are just in the packet, so the public's aware that the WIA is responsible for any conference realignment, not districts or conferences, but conferences can have a right to weigh in. At this time, obviously, the task force of the WIA is looking at it, but their plan as of right now is to possibly consider strongly McFarland moving to the Badger Conference, so moving out of the Rock Valley, which is our conference. Monroe moving into the Rock Valley Conference from the Badger Conference, and then Delavan Darien moving into the Rock Valley Conference from the Southern Lakes Conference. So that is the consideration at this time. To be truthful, some of us were concerned a little bit about travel time when you're talking about Monroe and just the distance. So we had large-scale discussions. We also recognize that our opinions might not really matter that greatly when it comes down to it, due to the fact, and it's not taking anything away from the WIA, it's basically you're dealing with multiple conferences. So you're not, I mean, you're trying to balance the state and then regions. So just because one conference might state they would really like to have these components doesn't necessarily mean it'll align well to the other. So we have written 2 letters. They're both in your board packets. We wrote one letter before they had their task force committee stating what we would prefer as Rock Valley Conference athletic directors and superintendents. That was, it looks like from the task force, probably not fully taken. And then we wrote another letter on the 10th of January, which stated we would like them to reconsider the realignment, and in this order, and that is first, if they're going to do a realignment, moving Monroe and Delavan Darien into the Rock Valley Conference, but yet keeping McFarland in the Rock Valley Conference. We would prefer that due to the fact that then it would create 12 teams. And this is everything except for football, by the way, so this is non-football. But we thought it makes the most sense from a 12-team conference, and then we would look at it from big and small on enrollments, due to the fact if you've looked at some of the scores, the lopsidedness, right? And I feel for a lot of those districts, they're saying we would really like to have a small conference quadrant and a large conference, and not have a 100 to 29 ball game anymore. The second one is moving Monroe and Delavan Darien into the Rock Valley, and then allowing McFarland to go to the Badger. But then we asked for them to consider Lake Mills moving to the Rock Valley Conference, due to the fact Lake Mills is very interested going from the capital to the Rock Valley, for a lot of the same reasons all these school districts are. Again, keeping it at 12. And we said if you can't keep it at 12, then allow Monroe and Delavan Darien to come into the RVC and keep it an 11-team conference, and we still will break them up into 2 different sub-conferences, probably one with 5 and one with 6, obviously. And just so you know, East Troy is the bubble. Like, we literally are right on the cusp between us and I believe it's Evansville that would be flipping back and forth if it's per enrollment to be in the top or the bottom all the time. So I just wanted to keep you abreast of what changes could be coming a year from now, too. That's a year from now, not next year.
Okay, school board candidacy for April 5th, 2022 election.
Yeah, just really quick. So we had 5 people of interest, 5 candidates. So we will be having a primary that'll be on the 15th of February, 2022. So those 5 candidates, and it's because we have 2 open available seats. And obviously, if you have more than double the open seats, you have to have a primary. 5, obviously more than 4. So what will occur is the 4 highest vote getters obviously will go then to the general election in April, and then the top 2 vote getters will fill the vacancies or fill the 2 open positions. So the 5 individuals that have declared their candidacy for consideration is Kevin Bong, Jessica Fuchs, Adam Lamar, Adam Wickowitz. Adam, am I right on that? All right. I was really listening tonight to you, too. I'm like, I got to say this right. And Ted Zess. So those are the 5. I wish all of them the best of luck, and honestly, I appreciate every single one of them showing interest in filling the 2 vacancies. It's nice to have people interested in wanting to be on the school board. So thank you to all 5 of you. I wish you the best in the primary, and as I say to everybody through the primary or general, if it doesn't work out as you had desired, still keep your interest in the school district, please. Oh, yeah, that's it, sorry.
Next is choosing board of canvassers for February primary election.
Yeah, so we usually only have to do this after the general, right? So, or the April. So what we have is that with the primary, we'll still need to do a board of canvassing. So
I will
we need
nominate
3
Stacy and me.
There you go. So we need 3 reputable citizens, and Ted usually does it when he's not a candidate. So Ted cannot be in this. So we have Steve and Stacy I hear already. So we need 1 more reputable citizen to be a part of it, and it would be on Monday, February 21st at 9 o'clock. Terry's already got it marked on the date. So it'd be Monday, February 21st, 9 o'clock at the district office. So if we could have 1 other individual who would want to show up for the board of canvassing, it does not take long.
Can it be another school board member, or is that?
Yeah,
I mean, I can do it. I don't care.
yeah, it could be you, Anna, or Dale, any of you guys. Yep.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay. So Steve, can we take that as your motion? That was you,
Yes.
Anna, and Stacy?
Yep, 9 o'clock on the 21st.
Yep.
That's 9 a.m., correct?
That is AM. Yep.
I'm just checking. I mean, we do these meetings at midnight, so.
That's fair.
We need a second. Anyone?
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, preliminary staffing proposals,
That'll go into executive session.
evaluation of district administrator,
Executive session.
administrative reports.
I originally had none, go figure, but I just want to point out, we had some really strong, I thought, informational readings in the packet, and I'm sure all of you really have gotten to them, and if you haven't, I understand, but I really would encourage you. But just to the public, there's a really good article out there by Forward Analytics about a new study that's finding Wisconsin's 10-year population growth at a record low. I don't think that's surprising to anybody, especially under the under 18 population declines, but it really talks a lot about what that means for the workforce and labor. And I think that's just it's interesting, and just the additional added pressures that will be put onto the tax base at the state and local governments as they rely on those age groups, right? So I found that article just very, very interesting. And one of the final statements, and I think we can all relate to that at our local level in East Troy's school district, the final sentence, with the state's population growth at an all-time low, the state will need to attract significantly more people over the next 10 years or risk a critically shrinking workforce and declining tax base. Sounds kind of very similar. So I just found that interesting. And another one that I'm sorry I didn't get to put in, but I think I did send it. Maybe I didn't. I apologize. I can if I did not. There was another one titled, and it was by Forbes, and it was Why Education is About to Reach a Crisis of Epic Proportions. And I think I shared this. I apologize, but I thought I had sent a link. And it was from Forbes, and it just talks about almost half of teachers are thinking about leaving their jobs. Where does that leave America? And it's not just teachers, it's support staff, it's administrators. But a recent survey, right, 48% of teachers admitted they had considered quitting within the last 30 days. Of that number, 34% said they were actually thinking about leaving the profession entirely. It goes on to talk about teachers and administrators alike are completely stressed out, overworked, and at the end of their rope. After the tremendous pressures of the past 2 years, they have nothing more to give. They already are giving everything: time, energy, mental well-being, and heart. They are beyond tired. They are exhausted. Conditions in the educational field have always trended toward demanding, but today they are a recipe for severe burnout, which teachers and administrators and aides are experiencing almost twice as much as other government employees per the survey. And it goes on to talk about then what they believe the fallout may be because of this burnout. Three major areas: a dropout in young people entering the profession. I think we kind of heard that tonight with Al's point. A drop in education quality, and a drop in graduation rates. And then they have some suggestions about what to do next, and it kind of goes to what Anna stated earlier, which we all are in full agreement, and that is trying to take stuff off people's plates, right, first and foremost. And then trying to stop believing that you can catch students back up. I thought that was an interesting perspective, that they're not saying that you shouldn't be working toward it, but by preaching to people you can catch them back up is giving them a false sense of what needs to occur. So they have some other ideas about that. They said that trying to rebuild trust, equipping teachers for their real work, but needing to provide the necessary support and resources to them, and raising morale and their salaries. And then their final thing was everybody understanding we're not going back. So stop fighting to go back to the way it was, because it's not going to happen. I thought it was a really good article on so many levels about what we're dealing with. So anyways, that was that. And on the bus transportation side, last week we had to combine the Quail and Alligator routes. I know I sent that out to those. We sent that out from the Transportation Department. I informed the board of that, but I just wanted to keep people informed of that too, due to the fact we've been doing great this year, but obviously we're running into some shortages on that end now too. So that's it. Thank you.
Any other reports? Kate, Amy? Policy review and development, first reading.
First reading, we don't need to go great in depth by any means. I will have Shayna look at it after tonight. She hasn't even looked at this reading yet. But this comes from, you'll see the key term up there, student interviews and searches. We've had a policy on searches, and we have practices on searches, but we want to try to eliminate lack of clarity on the interviewing. So we're trying to put it, we thought the best way to do that maybe would be to create a policy which would provide more guidance to our building level administrators, to give to parents, to talk parents through, so there's not a lack of clarity when a child is being interviewed. Oh, why did I or didn't I, why did he get a call this time or she get a call, but why didn't I get a call this time? And so we were trying to provide clarity to that about when one could get a call and when one should get a call and when it's not necessarily required, but may be in the best interest depending upon what's occurring. So we're trying to provide clarity to that interview aspect. So that's that. So if you have more further questions, feel free to email me even, and I can give you background and all that. But this is the primary thing of what we're trying to do, and we may be. Are we
getting that, Dr. Hebner, tonight?
Yes,
Are we getting it?
What's that?
Are we being handed it tonight?
Was it on your pack?
I don't have it. No.
I will make a copy with you for you.
Communications or announcements? Anything?
Quick for a little congratulatory to Reed Oldenburg. Reed, the National Interscholastic, he'll kill me for saying it, but I don't care. He said I don't need it to be public, but it's going to be. We already put it on the webpage, Reed, so haha. The National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association is pleased to announce that Reed Oldenburg, Athletic Director at East Troy Community School District, has been recognized by the NIAAA as a Certified Athletic Administrator. To earn this distinction, Reed Oldenburg has demonstrated the highest level of knowledge and expertise in the field of interscholastic athletic administration. The voluntary certification process included a thorough evaluation of the candidate's educational background, experience, and professional contributions, as well as a rigorous, comprehensive written examination. Congratulations, Reed. And an FYI to the board, I wanted to let all of you know that Rick Brandner, our current baseball coach, head baseball coach at East Troy, informed Mr. Oldenburg in early December that he would be resigning from that position, as Rick decided that it's time to pursue other opportunities, especially those which involve the development of his own children in athletics. So that's just an FYI.
Any other future items? We have donations talked about already, the middle school plan that we want to revisit, ESSER learning loss funds potentially.
One other thing, do we know where the new HVA system, where we're at with that, and where the energy policy stands? Maybe review of that. I was unable to come to the last time that Andy talked about it.
Anything else? Okay, then I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussion of preliminary staffing proposals and district administrator evaluation as provided under 19.851B and 19.851C.
I'll second.
And we need a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We'll adjourn.